After selecting a series of talents, Ross's talent skills tree was changed beyond recognition. Combat Department. Firearms shooting, 50. Close combat fighting, 100. Distortion fruit, 165. Marine rokushiki, soru, 0. Marine rokushiki, kami-e, paper drawing, 0. General Department. Agility enhancement, 50. Physical enhancement, 100. With the high-level physical enhancement and the 165 proficiency in the distortion fruit ability, various aspects of his have been greatly enhanced. His physical strength has strengthened by 3 times, which allowed him to withstand the further improvement of the distortion fruit ability. Now the range of distortion fruit should reach nearly 15 meters, which means from where he is standing he can completely distort the area of 15 meters around him. This power of distortion is enough to withstand normal guns' bullets, and even against those portable cannons. After all the upgrades were completed, Ross adapted to his enhanced strength while waiting quietly for the bombardment to end. On the ground, the continuous bombardment continued on for less than 2 minutes, and the broken building could no longer withstand it. Amidst the smoke and fire, the building collapsed. The stones that splashed around also bruised several criminal organization members who were too close. Tell the guns teams to stop and cannoneer to continue the bombardment. Capone Beeg had a cigar in his mouth as he calmly stood at the front of the crowd. He was facing the collapsing buildings without retreating while giving orders in a deep voice. Yes. The members of the criminal organization members armed with guns ceased firing. As the buildings had fully collapsed, their guns did not have much effect. The remaining cannoneers are still firing cannonballs continuously and bombarding the wreckage of the collapsed buildings, and there is not a single part of the building which was not broken as a result. Bang! Bang! After another 10 minutes, the walls of the building could not be seen as they were all broken to pieces, which were mixed with countless iron filings and debris. Godfather, the cannonballs are all used up. It's about time to stop. This level of concentrated firepower is enough to kill anyone, and even if Ghost Hand Ross is an Iron Man, he would have been broken into pieces. A captain who led many gunners went to Capone Beeg and reported. Capone Beeg stared at the broken ruins and finally nodded and spit out a ring of smoke. Almost. Let the gunners keep 2 cannonballs while fired everything else. It will be regarded as a salute to the funeral. Yes. The captain responded and quickly conveyed the order. Listening to the sounds of gunfire that was slowly weakening, many Capone Mafia members looked at the wreckage of the building with an evil smile on their faces. To dare provoke Capone Mafia, this is the end for him. Did he think we are powerless because he is a pirate? Pirates always have to come ashore. In the middle of ridicule and evil laughter of the many Capone Mafia members, the sound of gunfire has finally stopped completely, and the wreckage has become almost flat, leaving only smoke and weak flames. Capone Beeg walked next to a member of the criminal organization holding the camera. Is it all recorded? No problem, boss, the entire process was recorded. That's good, we can take this recording to the Marines for the bounty. Capone Beeg smiled a little. He is not very interested in money, but to have strong firepower, money is essential. After all, Ghost Hand Ross's has a bounty of 40 million berries. If it is coupled with the pirate Captain Whiteblade, it is 75 million berries, enough to purchase a large number of weapons for his troops. However, just as Capone Beeg commanded his men and planned to evacuate, he heard few voices from the piece of ruins that had turned into debris. Hearing the sounds, the members of the Mafia were first stunned for a moment. They thought that a cannonball that did not explode had blown up at this time, but soon they found that their conclusion was wrong. Huala! Following countless debris and iron pieces splashing out, a figure drilled out from the ruins filled with smoke. His body was completely clean, and not only his shirt was not the slightest bit tattered, but there wasn't even a little bit traces of burns. Ross patted the burnt black dust stuck on his shoulders as he slowly stepped out of the smoke-filled ruins. Did you really thought that it is finished, Capone Beeg? Ross calmly looked at Capone Beeg in the crowd. Hey. Capone Beeg's face looked a bit ugly and his teeth put force, almost biting the cigar in the mouth, but he still coldly said. I didn't expect you to be still alive, but if you had escaped the mass bombardment, you should have kept hiding and not come out like this. Do you think that with your strength you can reverse this huge disparity in power? If I don't try it, how would I know? Ross glanced at the guns and the cannons that aimed at him and his eyes calmly returned to Capone Beeg. After his voice fell, he did not move forward to fight but took a gentle step forward and walked out of the ruins and toward Capone Beeg step by step. The atmosphere is very strange. Being pointed out at by the countless guns, Ross did not seem to see the guns and cannons that were aimed at him at all. He was very calm as he slowly stepped forward. Kill him. Capone Beeg stared at Ross, who was walking towards him step by step, for 2 seconds. His eyes flashed with murderous intent and he shouted loudly. Bang! 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 Suddenly, countless guns aiming at him fired at the same time. Bullets and artillery all hit Ross, but they strangely passed through Ross. Ross was still slowly moving forward step by step. He completely ignored the gunfire as if it had never happened. What is going on? The ferocious faces of Capone Mafia members couldn't help but turn dumbfounded. They helplessly looked at guns spitting fire, but they couldn't cause Ross, who was slowly moving forward, to stop the slightest bit. Capone Beeg was also slightly shocked, but soon he recalled all the information about Ross. There seems to be a piece of information about him that shows his ability to create illusions. Is that illusory image? Where is his main body? Capone Beeg had a grave expression and he didn't dare to show slightest bit carelessness. He raised his concentration to the max, intending to respond to Ross's surprise attack that may appear at any time, and looking for Ross' real position. Ross could only use distort light and couldn't distort the sound, but because of the violent gunfire in all directions, it has overshadowed the sound of his slow footsteps, so that Capone Beeg couldn't detect it. The situation on the ground was just an effect similar to the refraction of light in water. But, after learning that Ross seen by his eyes is an illusory image, Capone Beeg quickly responded, and ordered his subordinates. Don't aim, and just randomly shoot at the central area. The Mafia members who were shocked by Ross's ability, after hearing Capone Beeg's command were slightly shocked, but they quickly executed the command and began to shoot at the ground, firing 360 degrees around them without leaving a blind corner. This attack has had some effect. Some of the bullets in the field showed a strange distorted scene in the void after the shot, as if space was folded and the shooting route changed into an arc. Even if it was just a simple visual distortion, it looks very shocking. There is no effect at all. Damn, what is this ability? The members of the Mafia finally revealed panic on their face. However, compared to the panic of his subordinates, Capone Beeg was extremely calm. After he sensed that Ross's main body was really somewhere here, he decisively gave an order in a low voice. Victor, give it to me. A strange lanky young man grinned and pulled out 2 delicate and bizarre guns from his waist and continues to fire bullets towards Ross. These singular bullets scatter around, and one of them happens to be at the position where the Ross body is located. Ross instinctively perceived the threat. He did not have the ability to withstand the bullets of the thin young man and quickly dodged. The bizarre bullet was able to rub against Ross's waist. Although it was only a moment, Ross was still keenly aware that his devil fruit could hardly destroy the bullet. Without a doubt, they were seastone bullets. In this sea for the things that can restrict the devil fruit ability, seastone is undoubtedly the most restrictive thing, even more than the sea water. Many of Paramecia's devil fruit abilities, such as Straw Hat Luffy rubber ability, become soft and weak when he falls into the sea, but the body still remains in the rubber form. But seastone can turn the devil fruit ability back into the original form and flesh and blood become completely ordinary that can be hurt. For Ross, his distortion fruit is more inclined to twist something when it is launched. In addition to light distortion, the body needs to touch the substance to take effect. Any bullet that touches his body will be affected by the power of distortion at the moment of touching. But the seastone bullets are different, as the moment they touch his body, they will make his body unable to use the ability. On the field, although the light is still distorted, which greatly interferes with everyone's vision, Ross's body dodged and the illusion of light refraction is naturally completely synchronized. Ross can control the phantom and his body's movements at the same time, but it will not have any meaning and it will take a lot of energy and stamina. Capone Beeg perceived that Ross evaded the seastone bullets. He once again revealed a confident look. When I know that you are a devil fruit user, do you think I will not prepare anything for you and just act rashly? Seastone weapon, you really are well prepared. But Ross calmly listened to Capone Beeg's words, but did not do anything. Instead he responded calmly. So what? Even if you have a seastone weapon, you have to be able to hit me first. Whiz. Whiz. Almost at the moment when Ross's voice fell, the illusion in the field suddenly stepped forward, and he rushed to the crowd at a very fast speed. Seastone weapon restrained devil fruit ability, but it can't restrain other abilities, and for Ross, in addition to devil fruit ability, his physical strength is also 3 times stronger. Originally, His physical strength was already much stronger than that of ordinary people, and he was 3 times more powerful than any ordinary person, but now with the physical enhancement, his already strong body became a lot stronger and the effects are extremely terrifying. Even the effect of Soru of Marine's Rokushiki is increased, even if there is no extra proficiency in it. His current speed is comparable to those that have been training in it for many years. Scoff. Scoff. Ross's figure swiftly passed through the crowd. Wherever he went, flesh, blood, and bones burst and the scene looked like a grand feast from hell. Originally his speed was extremely fast, and with the visual interference produced by light distortion, no one could capture his silhouette and launch an attack. Damn. Capone Bede didn't expect Ross' speed to be so terrifying, and his ability to use illusion became even more troublesome when his speed was already so fast. Even though his subordinates have some extraordinary powers, but even if they try to fight him they will lose as they are no match for Ross. Seeing that in a short amount of time his subordinates suffered dozens of casualties, and they are still increasing as the time passed on, Capone Bede has no choice but to order his subordinates to evacuate. Everyone, stop firing. Victor, Ley, stop him. The way the Ross slaughtered his men is way too horrible. Almost everywhere you can see a piece of flesh and blood, and in some parts, there are people who had been twisted into dough twist. Those members of the criminal organization who held the guns and firearms did not know how to attack and had long become fearful and resigned. They heard their boss's orders and retreated. At the same time, 2 of Capone Bede's subordinates, Victor and Ley, pulled out a few poles of different colors which seems like they were made of steel and ran towards Ross. Seastone weapons are difficult to make into the shape of a sword. Poles are the easiest to make. It is much easier to make than handcuffs. It can also be used as a sword when facing a devil fruit ability users, because they only need to hit hard and the sea stone will be able to damage any devil fruit user. Don't resist and allow us to capture you. You are not the first devil fruit user that we have killed. Victor and Ley's faces were ferocious, and after judging the real position of Ross's body they separated to left and to the right to intercepted Ross in the center. Although the illusion produced by light distortion still causes great interference towards guns and cannons, you can still rely on sound in the battle. Ross looked at Victor and Ley who were surrounding him and glanced at the seastone weapon in their hands, saying, "Seastone weapon, this is a real limitation on my ability, but you have made a big mistake?" "What?" Victor and Ley were slightly stunned by Ross's tone. "Seastone restricting ability is not your ability, it is just a tool. For the real battle, you have to look at the person's own ability." After saying that, Ross suddenly pulled out the named sword Happy Spring from his waist, and clashed with the 2 approaching men. Buzz. Under Ross's wave, invisible sword energy rushed out from the sword and swept directly toward Victor and Ley. Although Ross does not have any sword arts talent, close combat fighting also contains a small part of the sword arts like slash, cuts, and stabs, etc. In many cases, it can also be used as a brute force like Rankyaku, Tempest Kick, of Marine's Rokushiki. And his present physical ability has met the standard by which it has become possible for him to activate Rankyaku, Tempest Kick, and in this case, he is holding a named sword, so it is easy for him to produce sword energy from a simple cut. Victor and Ley couldn't see the invisible sword energy cuts, but they suddenly felt fear. They instinctively became aware of the coming danger and subconsciously placed the seastone poles in front of them. Bang! Almost at the moment when the sword energy was in contact with the seastone poles, a terrifying giant force spread through the seastone poles and came towards them. Seastone can withstand the devil fruit ability, and can even block many top swordsmen's cuts, but they cannot completely neutralize the violent energy cuts. This is bad. The power of this guy. This attack directly pushed them back 3 or 4 meters. Although they were able to stop themselves, their entire arms were numb, as they looked at each other in horror. They completely lost. They are not afraid of any simple swordsmen or body technique experts, who can be killed with large-scale intensive firepower. They are not afraid of devil fruit ability. With seastone poles and seastone bullets, it is enough to deal with them. But a person who can almost crush their existence in terms of body and sword arts, but at the same time is a devil fruit user who can ignore the gun's artillery. He is a big trouble. People at this level of existence will be able to acquire a place for them even in the Grand Line. His reward of 40 million berries is way too low when compared to his strength. In a distant place, seeing Ross hit the seastone weapons of Victor and Ley, forcing them back 3 or 4 meters, Capone Bede could no longer remain calm. He clearly didn't expect Ross's body technique and sword arts to be so terrifying such that Ross could easily run amok in the West Blue. After determining that his battle plan has failed, Capone Big put away his guns without any hesitation and turned to leave. Don't you think it's too late to leave now? Of course, Ross wouldn't easily let Capone Big go. He calmly spoke and at the same time stepped forward, rushing towards Capone Big. Capone Big, the character who stirred up a lot of trouble in the original work, is indeed not an ordinary man. He could still respond to his Soru. Bang! Bang! Instantly when Ross started pursuing him, he resolutely turned around, jumped back, pulled the trigger and fired a series of seastone bullets towards Ross. Ross can easily ignore any ordinary bullet, and even if it is a high-standard large lead bullet, it can be blocked by his current distortion fruit ability, but he still needs to be a little respectful to the seastone bullets. Whiz! Ross leaned to the side to avoid the bullets, and at that moment Victor and Ley, who were repelled by him earlier, clenched their teeth and rushed towards him. If Capone Big is killed by Ross, they will definitely die too. As long as they can block Ross, there is still a chance for them. Are you willing to die for him? Ross looked calmly and indifferently at Victor and Ley, who rushed to block him and gently adjusted the sword in his hand. Then, I will fulfill your wish. Buzz. Although Ross's sword arts can't be called anything special, but with his strong physical strength and speed, his cuts are still extremely powerful. The sword fell, and although it was not wrapped in sword energy, it created heavy wind pressure. It seems to have mountain cleaving and splitting earth might, making people's breath stagnate. We need to block this. Victor and Ley's hearts jumped fiercely, but at this time they could only clench their teeth, held the seastone poles in their hands and cooperate to block Ross's sword. Clang! The sword and the seastone poles intersected and the sparks flew out in all directions due to the collision. Seastone's texture is extremely hard. Even Happy Spring, one of the 21 great grade swords, Owazamono grade swords, cannot cut that no matter how much power Ross applies. But Ross's sword has a very strong and violent power contained in it, and it pressed against Victor and Ley, who were holding the seastone pole. Kacha! Kacha! Ross' double-handed sword with his power alone put Victor and Ley under tremendous pressure, and even the ground under their feet showed signs of cracking. Although Victor and Ley were barely able to resist, both of their faces flushed red and their arms trembled, clearly suffering from overexertion. Ross was disinclined to fight them any longer, and his hands holding the sword pushed down hard. Chi! Sword energy with a brute force rushed out and cut the ground in front of Ross, forming a crack of about 3 feet, and Victor and Ley were naturally directly defeated. Ross didn't pause, and his face was calm and indifferent as he ran the sword through Victor's heart. Victor! Ley screamed. He spared no effort and smashed the seastone pole towards Ross, but both his arms had already lost their strength. Where would he still have the energy? Ross backhanded his sword and sent Ley's seastone pole flying. He shook his wrist, and then a head followed by blood flew into the sky. Killing Victor and Ley seemed to be a trivial matter for Ross. He didn't give them another glance. He turned around the sword and looked at Capone Big, who had escaped towards a street. Whiz! Ross stepped on the ground and cracks like a spider web appeared on the ground. He was like an arrow fired from a bow as he sped forward, sticking close to the ground. Almost instantaneously, Ross has crossed the street and caught up with Capone Big in the middle of the second street. Bang! Bang! Capone Big heard the movement behind him, and without even seeing, he fired a row of bullets towards Ross and forced him to evade as Big continued to escape. Even though the distance was very close, Ross, who was focused, easily avoided the seastone bullets. 5. Now you should not have any more bullets. Ross's calmly says, and in one step came behind Capone Big with Happy Spring in his hands waving out mercilessly. And just as Capone Big was about to lose his head, a figure wearing a coat with justice written on it suddenly came in between them. Clang! Ross's sword stopped at a half-foot distance from Capone Big's head. What prevented him from this was enormous shark sword. The enormous shark sword covered the back of Capone Big's head and occupied all the space between Happy Spring and Capone Big's head. The atmosphere solidified. Ross slightly narrowed his eyes and looked at Marine, who had suddenly emerged. His insignias were different from the colonel he had seen before. It was the insignia of the higher rank, and he also found the person in front of him very familiar. I finally found you, Ghost Hand Ross. The tall Marine holding the shark sword and wearing a strange bullhead mask said indifferently, as he blocked Ross's Happy Spring in midair. I am from the West Blue T4 branch base. You can call me the Bastille or call me Rear Admiral Bastille. Bastille. Ross thought and remembered who this person was. He was a vice admiral who, in the original work, had followed Admiral Fujitora to Dressrosa to carry out a mission, but right now he is only a rear admiral in West Blue. There are not many marine bases in West Blue, and most of them are on islands. The highest officer is only a marine captain in them. But, now to capture Ross, if you look in the whole West Blue, there are only a few rear admiral bases. The cigar was still in Capone B's mouth. Yes. The operation to annihilate Ghost Hand Ross was planned by him for many days, and even if he failed by some unexpected circumstances, he still has a plan ready for that. This information of retreat path, he had received 2 hours ago, and that also happened to be the time when Marines arrived and landed on the ground. He turned to look at Ross, the corners of his mouth slightly raised, like a winner ridiculing a loser, saying, "Before taking any action, you must consider the risk of failure and thoroughly plan your evacuation." Chi. Ross took back Happy Spring, and the shark cutter scraped and a few sparks flew, but there was no damage on the sword. Is the West Blue Marine already degraded to the extent of being commanded by a criminal organization? Ross looked calmly at the Marine Rear Admiral. Bastille snorted and put the enormous shark cutter on his shoulder. He said, "It's just a report from the public, so are you going to surrender, or are you going to wait for me to beat you half to death before taking you?" He didn't like the criminal organization, and he was even more disgusted with receiving assistance from the criminal organization, but the Marine headquarters had issued the order to capture Ghost Hand Ross no matter what, and that order has been on his desk for a few months already. The scene was quiet. Ross calmly glanced behind Bastille's shoulders at Capone B, who stood a few meters away. He suddenly laughed. "Why are you laughing?" Bastille asked with a frown. Ross slowly raised his head, revealing an expression that he had never revealed before. It was hard to tell this expression as a smile, but it was really a smile, only it was cruel and bloodthirsty and also a little bit cheerful. "Marine Rear Admiral. It's really, not a bad Marine rank." Bastille did not understand what Ross meant. Whether Ross felt that his rank was very high or very low, he could not see it from Ross's expression. Ross's expression was as if he is looking at his prey, but this expression was very strange and laughable in Bastille's eyes. Prey? He is the captain of the West Blue at 4 branch and not the Marine captain of those branch divisions. His strength has already surpassed the pirates that have the bounty of more than 50 million berries, and he had defeated more than one of those pirates. Such that before long, with his achievements and age, he will be able to transfer to headquarters to serve a post or to a large base on the Grand Line and become a vice admiral. Ross dared to show him this kind of look? Ridiculous? And the Marine branch that he leads has already docked 2 battleships on the shoreline. Even if Ross wants to escape, he will be bombed by close-range bombardments, including people and ship. It seems that you are not willing to surrender. Bastille's aura changed from calm to fierce in an instant, and he unknowingly revealed a ferocious expression on his face under the bull head mask. But there is no doubt of that. When he held the handle of his shark cutter, the pressure of a strong expert was revealed, and it made Capone B in the distance look dignified. "Godfather, Victor and Ley are all ready. The guns group have at least 114 casualties and the artillery team has at least 19 casualties. The loss is very heavy. There were scattered members of the criminal organization as well as a large number of Marine forces who came over here, and members of the criminal organization reported to Capone B. Marines' attitude towards the members of the criminal organization is very unfriendly, but due to the orders of their superiors, the criminal organization members such as Capone B were ignored. The loss is very serious, but it does not affect the overall situation," Capone B said with a calm expression, as he had a cigar in his mouth while looking at Bastille and Ross, who were confronting each other in the distance. Although Bastille is proud, he doesn't look down on Ross. Any pirate that has the ability to throw West Blue into chaos, he needs to face them seriously. Chi. His both hands gripped the handle of the shark cutter as he fiercely waved it towards Ross. A heavy momentum, bringing along a terrifying and invisible attack, swept obliquely towards Ross. This enormous shark cutter can very easily shot out formless attacks by only relying brute force, not to mention that Bastille's own sword arts were also very extraordinary. However, such a powerful attack also has its weakness, that is the speed, which is too slow. Ross only needs to step slightly to one side to avoid the attack. Soru. Ross's gaze was like a lion staring at its prey, calm and steady, as he stepped forward and rushed towards Bastille. Bastille had read all the information on Ross, and he knew that Ross could use Soru of Marine's Rokushiki and has the ability to distort steel and even bullets, so when Ross rushed over, he didn't panic, and lifted his huge shark cutter and with a mighty force slammed it downwards towards Ross. Because of the close distance, this attack was more difficult to dodge than the previous attack as it directly chops downwards towards Ross. However, just as the sword fell, Ross's body suddenly, just like a piece of paper, swayed and dodged the attack. Kami-e, paper drawing. After avoiding Bastille's sword with Kami-e, paper drawing, Ross raised his hand and punched at Bastille's stomach. Even though Bastille was extremely tall, almost twice as big as Ross, he doesn't dare to face Ross's attack head-on. He did not hesitate and used Soru to avoid Ross's fist and at the same time attack with his sword at Ross's back. Whiz! Ross looked calm as if everything was within his expectation. He leapt gently and turned over in the air and extended his hand and pressed it on Bastille's shark cutter. Gotcha! Even though it was in contact for only an instant, the enormous shark cutter distorted and cracks appeared on it. 1/3 of the sword had distorted into a spiral shape. Seeing that his shark cutter was damaged, Bastille immediately flew into rage. Both of his hands lifted the broken shark cutter high into the sky. Suddenly, he seemed to split into three, and as he chopped down, 3 different attacks unexpectedly hacked down. Is this the combination of Kami-e, paper drawing, and sword arts? Ross lightly snorted but did not choose to withdraw as he greeted one of the sword by clenching his fist and slamming it towards the attack. Originally 1/3 of the shark cutter has been damaged, weakening Bastille's attack power, but Bastille still used this type of scattered attack expecting it to finish Ross, but to Ross, this attack has already been weakened, so why wouldn't he dare to face it head-on? Buzz! Ross directly evaded 2 of Bastille's 3 attacks and punched towards the last attack. The moment the formless attack touched Ross's fist, it froze in the air and its form appeared, flickering. The power of distortion in sword arts attack collided and a powerful explosion erupted out in midair, forming a violent whirlwind, blowing in all directions. Rumble! The intangible sword energy produced by Bastille attack twisted and exploded under the power of distortion. It turned into innumerable numbers of small sword energies, which splashed out in all directions, leaving slight cracks on the ground and the walls. At the same time, with the help of attack's momentum, Ross suddenly stepped forward and grabbed the front part of Bastille's shark cutter. Gotcha! Gotcha! Even though Bastille retracted the sword without any hesitation, his shark cutter was still struck by Ross's palm. In an instant, the entire front part of the sword completely distorted and was squeezed into an iron ball covered in irregular cracks. The middle part of the shark cutter was also greatly affected. Distortions and cracks appeared on the entire sword and edge of the sword, leaving only the 1/3 of its part at back still intact. Rear Admiral Bastille's shark cutter. That is the paramecia distortion fruit ability in the intelligence? The numerous Marines in the surroundings saw that Bastille's weapon was almost completely destroyed by Ross, and they revealed a look of surprise. Some Marine captains had cold sweats on their foreheads. They didn't expect Ross to be even more powerful than the Rear Admiral Bastille. If Bastille lost to Ross, the following consequences would be unimaginable. Snipers. Aim at Ghost Hand Ross. The officers above Lieutenant Commander come with me to help Rear Admiral Bastille. Several Marine captains of the T4 base looked at the situation and made a quick decision to support Bastille by joining forces with him so that they can suppress Ghost Hand Ross together. Bastille thought he was enough to suppress Ross, but he didn't expect Ross to be so powerful. Even he was helpless against him. The decision made by the Marine captains in the distance was correct. Although he would lose face, he was still a Marine. For a Marine, they don't care for process and only care about the result. In the distance, Capone Beg felt that it was not looking good as he directed his subordinates to clean up the mess while watching the fight between Bastille and Ross. Even a Rear Admiral of T4 base can't deal with Ghost Hand Ross? This group of Marines are too useless. Especially when he looked at the Marine snipers trying to snipe Ross from far away, he couldn't help but bit the cigar in his mouth hard as his eyes became even more gloomy. Bang! Bang! 2 gunshots sounded. Finding an opening, 2 snipers aimed at Ross and fired, and as expected, the instant the bullets touched Ross's body, their direction got reversed. Seastone bullets are extremely hard to manufacture and extremely expensive, so it is naturally impossible for the Marines of West Blue to gather these bullets in large quantities. What? Damn! The bullet reversed their course and shot towards the two Marine lieutenant commanders who had attacked Ross. Holes appeared on their bodies, knocking them down directly. "Don't shoot. Bullets are useless against this guy." Bastille saw the situation and hurriedly gave the order to the Marines. And at this time, Ross moved. Under the siege of more than 10 Marine officers, Ross had no hesitation or intention to stop as he threw a punch directly converting 3 steel swords into scrap iron balls, followed by 2 lieutenant colonel who flew backward with a bang sound, not knowing whether they are alive or dead. Bang! Bang! Ross's speed was too fast compared to those lieutenant commander and commander, even if they could also use Soru. Compared to Ross, their speed was a lot worse. They couldn't resist Ross's attack and they all got beaten down with blood and broken bones flying out. Even Marine captain who could react to his speed were helpless against him. The swords in their hands would turn into a scrap iron the moment they attacked, and even their arms and bodies weren't safe as they would be directly twisted into a dough twist if they were touched by Ross. Damn! Bastille cursed angrily. If Bastille, carrying the half-broken shark cutter, was not constantly attacking Ross, then the several captains' colonels would have long ago gotten defeated because their huge crowd tactics did not have any effect on Ross. The power of distortion fruit can forcibly distort all the things touched by the user's body. Although it is impossible for it to attack at a long range, in close combat, its powers are very similar to tremor fruit. Gura gura no mi. Unless someone hold a weapon made out of sea stone or have the strength that reached a level where they can use armament Haki to resist the power of distortion fruit. Otherwise, they will be defeated and killed when they encounter it. Blood and broken bones splashed out in all directions. Ross stepped on the rubble and rotten meat and fought against Bastille and other Marines. His expression remained unchanged from beginning to end. He was still so calm. There was no frown on his face seeing the blood or bones around him. This calmness was palpitating and frightening to Marines. This guy, devil, he is a devil. The several Marine captains besieging Ross had fear spreading in their hearts. Crazy and lunatics guys are nothing new for these battle-hardened Marines, but someone like Ross who held the absolute indifference to life and death is the most terrifying person they have ever encountered. A calm madman is the most dangerous. It's time to withdraw. Not far away, when Capone Beg saw the situation, his heart sank gradually and he finally could not hold back and gave orders to his remaining subordinates to withdraw. Almost at the time he gave his orders and was about to take off with his men, several Marine captains who were struggling to support Bastille in holding back Ross finally collapsed. Gotcha. After a few more hits, Ross finally turned Bastille's shark blade into a scrape of iron and the weapon became completely useless. Bastille lost his weapon and couldn't attack Ross any longer. Several Marine captains who were barely breathing were killed by Ross on the spot. Bastille looked at the broken bones and bodies of his subordinates before looking at Ross who was slowly walking towards him. He clenched his teeth and became angry and panicked. Rear Admiral Bastille. Open fire. In the distance, many Marines panicked and opened fire on Ross, but all the shots fired towards Ross became useless, without exception, in front of his distortion power. Ross's right hand clenched into a fist as he slammed it towards Bastille. Tekai, iron body. Bastille did not hesitate to show Marines Rokushiki's Tekai, iron body, trying to defend against Ross's attack, but under Ross's fist, his defense which could withstand bullets was broken. His muscles, which are comparable to the hardness of steel, were distorted and his inside gave a gotcha sound under the influence of the power of distortion. Bang! Ross stepped on the defeated Bastille. Although he couldn't see his expression under the mask, he thought it would be a panic and fear. A Marine Rear Admiral's head. I don't know if I can make some high-level Marines feel a little regret. No, maybe it will only make them angry. Ross suddenly smiled and put a little force into his feet. Like a rotten watermelon, the flesh and bones burst open in all directions. All the remaining Marines who tried to shoot and come forward to support Bastille stopped and looked at the hellish scene. Their hearts stopped beating and their breathing stopped. Their bodies petrified, their muscles are stiff and their brain seems to be unable to think. Whether it is turning around and running away or fighting desperately, they could not decide on any action. This is the state where, after suffering from deepest fear, their brains seem to have stopped. But this is just the beginning. Ross slowly retracted his foot and his face returned to his usual calm expression. The fight was over and there was not a drop of blood on him and his clothes. Although his clothes were slightly damaged and tattered, they were still clean, which is very different from the bloody hell around him. After killing Bastille, Ross's ear rang with a clear and familiar system sound. West Blue at 4 Branch Base Marines and Rear Admiral Bastille have been completely defeated, and the award obtained is 80 talent proficiency points and 1 free talent point. The reward is not low. Ross slightly smiled and turned his head and looked in Capone Bega's direction, who was trying to escape. Now, there is only one last thing left. With one step, he had already crossed over dozens of meters, and with another step he crossed the same distance. After continuing running for 2 streets in succession, Ross took one step and leapt in midair, lightly falling in front of Capone Bega, who was fleeing. Looking at the extremely ugly visage of Capone Bega, Ross calmly said, "Game over." 2 days later, the latest news, along with newspaper spread throughout West Blue. Ghost Hand pirates, Captain Ghost Hand Ross, in the Kingdom of Smale, recklessly fought Capone family criminal organization, and killed the criminal organization's godfather Capone Bega with utter disregard to order, causing great damage to the peace of the Kingdom of Smale. West Blue at 4 Branch Base, Base Chief Bastille led Marine to attack the White Blade Pirate Group, and in the process of killing White Blade Pirate Group they were ambushed by Ghost Hand Ross and were unfortunately killed. All accompanied soldiers and officials died. Ghost Hand Ross is a cruel and sinister monster. Marine Headquarters will send a Headquarter Rear Admiral to take care of Ghost Hand Ross. Other than that, Ghost Hand Ross's bounty has been upgraded by the Marine to 64 million berries, surpassing the original West Blue's highest bounty of Double Sword Dillo, captain of the Double Sword Pirate Group, making his bounty highest in the West Blue. The news spread fast and the West Blue trembled on the sea. The ship with a pirate flag was rapidly moving through the sea. In the top cabin of the ship, Ross was sweating as he was doing the most basic push-ups on the reinforced floor. On his shoulders, he is carrying 2 huge steel dumbbells. This weight was enough for him to exercise. 993, 994. Ross constantly lifts up his body and the muscles on his arms were completely taut. The torso that seemed to be no different from any average person had enough power to smash any pirate with the bounty of 50 million berries. 999, 1000. The counting of numbers continues. When the number reached 1000, Ross finally stopped. Putting the weights on his shoulders down to relieve the tension on his shoulders, he lied down on the floor to rest, breathing heavily. Sweat continually flows out of his body, soaking the floor. Thump. There was a knock on the door outside. Ross lay there, too lazy to get up and open the door, so he directly said in a lazy voice, "Come in. Here is your lemon tea." Robin walked in with a plate and there was a teacup on it. She saw Ross lying there without any care and smiled slightly at him before placing the plate on the table next to him. Ross rested for a few more seconds before he got up and took the cup from the table and drank it in on go. "Where are we now?" "According to Captain's calculation yesterday, we should have arrived near the Kano country," Robin whispered. Although she was not very proficient in navigation, she has asked Ross to teach her, and she has also learned quickly while on the sea, so right now she has learned more than enough to be a navigator of a regular ship. Naturally, whether it's Ross or Robin, their navigation techniques are not enough to sail the Grand Line. After all, the climate on the Grand Line is really weird and unpredictable. Ross doesn't want to waste any talent proficiency points on the navigation talent, not to mention that he was often too lazy to measure the wind direction of sea maps himself. That will waste too much practice time. So no matter what, this ship still needs a professional level navigator, but this is West Blue. If it was the East Blue, Ross would not mind abducting the lowly version of Nami. "Have we already arrived in Kano country?" Ross gradually calmed down the feeling of weakness and fatigue from his body while hearing Robin's report and put the cup down. If the information is correct, we should be able to find polar bear pirates in Kano country, which has 45 million berries bounty on them. Robin nodded. There should be no problem with the information, but this Kano country is not a friendly country. "I know." Ross smiled. Kano country controls a huge official pirate force, the most powerful of which is the HAPO Navy. The leader is Don Chinjiao, who once sailed on the Grand Line, with the bounty of 500 million berries, and later has his head flattened by Garp's fist, damaging his strength greatly. Kano country's influence is strongest in the Grand Line. West Blue's side only has some reserve force, except for maybe leader Don Chinjiao, who is enjoying life here in retirement, but it is unlikely that we will encounter him. Captain seems to know Kano country very well. Robin looked at Ross in surprise as she was going to report to Ross what she knew about Kano country. Only know some things. Ross shrugged and said, In addition to the polar bear pirates, the keel and trunk materials of our new ship are also in the Kano country, and after acquiring them we can then go directly to Shipwright Town to find a shipwright to build us a new ship. Otherwise we have to go far away to get the materials. Robin stood by and listened quietly, without interfering with Ross's decision. Ross is not the strongest person she has ever seen, but he is the calmest and confident person among the people she has ever seen. Yes, it is self-confidence. This kind of emotion is not something that he wears on his face, but it's a kind of emotion that is hidden in the depths of his eyes, and only occasionally he reveals this emotion. Because she has been observing Ross keenly, she has captured this several times. This kind of self-confidence makes it difficult for her to describe it, and some of it is incomprehensible. It is like an inexplicable calmness of the world. In addition to self-confidence, Ross's calmness and determination are what she has encountered so far, and neither the leader of the underground organization or the pirate leaders can compare to it. Even if his strength is enough to cross the West Blue unhindered, he still insists on doing a lot of exercise and practice every day, although many times he also loves to enjoy shoulder massage and the like. Since Captain has already considered it, I will withdraw first. The thoughts on Robin's mind were fleeting. She smiled at Ross and said. Ross nodded and she left the room. Seeing Robin close the door, Ross grabbed the towel and wiped the sweat remaining on his face and shoulders and planned to do another exercise. Talent system gifted talents, especially the physical enhancement and agility enhancement of the general department, are based entirely on his own strength. Simply put, if his own strength is 100 pounds, after the basic level strength enhancement is done, it will be raised to 150 pounds. And if his own strength is 1,000 pounds, then after the basic level strength enhancement it will be raised to 1,500 pounds instead of 1,050 pounds. The general talents are not fixed upgrades. His current physical enhancement proficiency is at 100 points, bringing about 3 times his own self-based improvement, and his training exercise will also bring about 3 times as much improvement as anyone else who does not have the gift of physical enhancement. In this most people, even if they try their best to practice, it will be difficult for them to reach the level of Garp and Whitebeard in their lifetime. Even half of their level is hard to reach. For Ross, he only needs to exercise his body to a 1/3 level of Garp, and under the blessing of physical enhancement, he will be directly promoted to Garp level. Although it is difficult to exercise to 1/3 of Garp's level. Ross is not a mathematician and can't figure out anything precise, but he just needs to know that his training is more effective than others. Speaking of proficiency, I have not used the proficiency points I got from killing Bastille and the guy who had 34 million berries bounty. Ross did not hesitate and called the talent system out. It has been 2 months since he killed the Marine Rear Admiral Bastille. In the past 2 months, he only killed a pirate with 34 million berries bounty, but his accumulated money has already reached 90 million berries. That's why he came to Kano country. He will chase the captain of the Polar Bear Pirate Group who has the bounty of 45 million berries and purchases the main material for a new ship. Talent System Interface. At the bottom, there are Ross's remaining talent proficiency and free talent points, which are 1 point for free talent points and 110 points for talent proficiency. Ross first glanced at the Battle Talent Department, then decided to switch the talent interface to the General Talent Department that has physical enhancement in it. He quickly swept his eyes over, and something unexpected caught his eyes on top of the Battle Department's talents tree, a branch that he didn't know when but had changed from non-active gray to activatable green. The name of the branch is Observation Haki. The activation conditions of the Observation Haki has been fulfilled, making Ross surprised, and he subconsciously looked towards the other 2 types of Haki as well. However, the branch that indicates armament Haki was still gray, which means that Ross's current body is still not up to the standard of practicing and utilizing the armament Haki. It seems that observation Haki can be activated but armament Haki can't. Is it because I activated Kami-e, paper drawing? And I already had some rudimentary knowledge about observation Haki? Ross revealed a thinking expression. Kami-e, paper drawing, in Marine's Rokushiki also has high dodging rate, but this ability is used to dodge fists and swords. But if someone wants to use Kami-e, paper drawing, to dodge rains of bullets, it will not be possible for even Admiral Kizaru with his Pika Pika no Mi. Light fruit. It is only possible for someone proficient in observation Haki. If it is because of Kami-e, paper drawing, that I reached the standard for activating the observation Haki, then does that mean that if I put some proficiency point in Tekai, iron body, I will be able to reach the standard for activating armament Haki? Ross looked at Tekai, iron body, in Marine's Rokushiki, hesitating. Ross has reached the standard for activating Tekai, Iron Body, talent 2 months ago when he activated the physical enhancement of the General Talent Department and improved it, but he has not been willing to use his free talent points to activate it because it is not really useful for him. He now has only 1 free talent point, but he has 3 options. First, activate Observation Haki. Second, Tekai, Iron Body, of Marine's Rokushiki to meet the criteria for activating Armament Haki. Third, Geppo, Moonwalk. It's better to raise some physical enhancements first and see if there are any changes afterward. Ross hesitated for a moment before he made his choice. He finally decided to upgrade his physical strength first. Anyway, the benefits of improving physical strength is much more at present and it will not be wasted. Switching to the General Talent interface, Ross put 50 proficiency points in physical enhancement and the physical enhancement's talent proficiency increased from 100 to 150. Buzz. Ross felt a heat flow within his body starting from his heart and pouring down to his lower body before spreading to his entire body. This whole process only took a few seconds. Ross looked at his arm, perceiving some changes in his body before muttering to himself. Without a large degree of promotion, the effect of 50 proficiency points is not very obvious. He looked at the Battle Department interface. He found that it was still the same as before. There were no special changes. Armament Haki was still gray color, which means that it is inactive, and Geppo, Moonwalk, in Marine's Rokushiki is also gray. There are still 60 talent proficiency points left. Ross thought in his heart that with 60 talent proficiency points, the abilities of the distortion fruit will be greatly increased and his body will be able to fully withstand the fruit improved power, so overall his abilities and power will be greatly improved. On the other hand, the physical enhancement of the General Talent Department has reached 150 points in proficiency, and with another 50 points he will be able to reach high-level physical enhancement, and his physical strength will definitely skyrocket. In that case, without any doubt, Armament Haki and Geppo, Moonwalk, will enter an activatable state. Improving the battle power or improving the survivability and flexibility. With my current strength, in the West Blue, unless I encounter Don Shinjao or any high-level characters from the Grand Line, it will be easy to suppress anyone else. But even if I promote my strength a few times, it will be very difficult for me to fight against Don Shinjao, a monster that has a 500 million bounty on his head, so. Ross analyzed and finally made a choice. He put 10 talent proficiency points on the distortion fruit and another 50 proficiency points on the physical enhancement again. Buzz. The progress bar of physical enhancement advanced from 150 to the position of the high-level physical enhancement threshold line, while below the characters, high level, there was a golden light flashing, changing from gray to gold color. At the same time, a massive amount of energy emerged from Ross's heart and spread toward his whole body, soaking every muscle, every cell in this rich energy. At this moment, Ross could even feel that every cell in his body transmitted eagerness. They were eager to absorb this strange energy. After what seems like a long time, the strange power within Ross's body began to subside, but every cell in his body still desired this energy and they desperately swallowed the fading power. Finally, the energy in his body completely subsided. The cells throughout Ross's entire body violently swayed for a while before gradually calming down. High-level physical enhancement. This time, the promotion is extremely obvious for Ross. Although it is less than doubled, his overall power has increased by at least 60% to 70%. If converted, high-level physical enhancement should improve the original body by 5 times and the mid-level physical enhancement should improve the original body by 3 times. Coupled with the improvement brought about by his continuous practice over the past 2 months, he is now able to compete with Rear Admiral Bastille by only using his physical strength. After adapting to the changes in his body, Ross took a breath and switched back to the talent interface of the Battle Department. This time, the talents of the battle system has been completely renewed. Many talents that could not be activated before have all changed from gray to green. Marine's Rokushiki all turned into emerald green, Observation Haki and Armament Haki also became green, and even the Haoshoku Haki, Conqueror's Haki, became green, meaning now all of them could be activated. However, Ross turned his eyes and looked away. Compared to Haoshoku Haki, Conqueror's Haki, he cared more about the immediate usability of the selected talent. He will choose these powers later in the future when he has more free talent points. Armament Haki. Ross looked at the Armament Haki. It is impossible to say that he is not eager for this power, for it is a type of power that will enhance his powers even further. But he eventually chose to activate Geppo, moonwalk. Now that his strength is enough to run amok in West Blue freely, armament Haki is not something that is practical for him right now, as even with this, he will not be able to deal with the monster, that is, Don Chinjiao. But if he learns Geppo, moonwalk, he will be able to cope with most of the situations on sea, land, and air. He can even encircle a marine battleship without fear with Geppo, moonwalk, and can directly sink the battleship. I have not hunted pirates above 50 million berries bounties, then the next goal is almost certain. After the activation of Geppo, moonwalk, Ross took a breath. When he gets the new ship, he will destroy the West Blue double sword pirates and get a free talent point. Then he will activate armament Haki, after which he will put the Grand Line on his agenda. Since he selected Geppo, moonwalk, Ross naturally wants to try it. Although the abilities indicated in the talent system are activated in two ways, directly implanting into his brain and body strengthening, Ross has. If he doesn't try, then he would feel uncomfortable, symptom. He pushed the door open. Ross arrived at guardrail in the cabin's corridor and lightly put pressure under his feet and jumped up, before landing on the top of the cabin. Robin was sitting at a table in the direction of the deck and noticed Ross's movements. She turned her head and looked at him. When she saw that Ross has no new orders for her, she returned her gaze back. However, at this time, she saw that Ross suddenly leapt into the air, almost reaching sentry post's position above the sail. Then, Ross did not stop there, nor jump to the sentry post position. Instead, his feet tread in the air, as if stepping on solid air. He jumped once again. Leap. 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 It seemed like Ross was stepping on an invisible staircase, climbing up into the sky. Although the distance of elevation is not very high after each step, after dozens of steps, he turned into a small black dot in the air. As that, Geppo, moonwalk, Robin looked at Ross, who was treading in the air without any support and couldn't help but be slightly startled. She knows that Ross can use kami-e, paper drawing, and soru in Marine's rokushiki, but this is the first time she has seen him using Geppo, moonwalk. She has never been clear about where Ross has learned Marine's rokushiki techniques. Although most of the Marines from the Marine Headquarters recruiting camp can perform few techniques of Marine's rokushiki, Geppo, moonwalk, is still very rare because of the difficulty of learning, which is much higher than soru. In the air, Ross continued to use Geppo, moonwalk, 20 times in a row and arrived 30 or 40 meters from the boat in the sky, before feeling numbness in his legs and feet, so he stopped. Geppo, moonwalk, is not a move that helps with walking in the air. Instead, it uses powerful force and extremely fast speed to fiercely strike and pressing the air, causing the air to become something that can be stepped on. Not only does it cost a lot of stamina, but it is also very difficult to control. On the ground, he can cover more than 10 meters in a single step, but by using Geppo, moonwalk, in the air, it is difficult for him to even cover a 1-meter distance. If it was not for the talent system ability to directly infuse all the process and experience directly into his brain and strengthening the body, then he may not even be able to do this much. A short stay in the air nearly 50 meters from the sea. Ross is overlooking the sea below him, feeling the sea breeze blowing in his face, revealing a smile. That is Kano country. At the height of almost 50 meters, looking out into the distance, Ross could vaguely see something in the shape of a small island at the far end of the horizon. Since it can already be seen, it means that the distance is not very far. After taking a look, Ross took his gaze back and crashed towards the boat below, eventually falling back on top of the cabin. However, because he didn't control his strength and point of descent, he broke the top of the cabin and almost got stuck in it. Ross slightly tilted up the corners of his mouth and glanced to the left, and happened to see Robin looking at him in surprise from not far away. However, Robin just looked for a moment before she took back her gaze and continued to read her book with a calm expression as if she didn't see anything. Ross came down from the top of the cabin, commanded the handyman on the ship to repair the cabin and came to the deck. After 2 breaths, he again used Geppo, moonwalk. Geppo, moonwalk, is a very good training method to temper his body for the current him. Carrying a heavy load or whatnot, with his current physique is already very average. If the weight is too heavy, his boat will not be able to bear, and if it is too light, it will not be effective. But Geppo, moonwalk, which does not require any heavy load, is still very stamina-consuming exercises, and it would be better to train it. When the numerous handymen saw that Ross was able to go towards the sky, they were even more awed by Ross. They did not dare to be lazy, and quickly hammered the ship to repair the cabin. Kano country. This is a country of pirates. Because the king is qualified to participate in the World Council, Marines rarely comes to visit the country, resulting in a large number of pirates frequently gathering in the country. However, the pirate gathered here at most will have a small skirmish between them and would not dare to disturb the order of Kano country. Chinjiao, the drill of HAPO Navy with the bounty of 500 million berries, is not someone one can mess around with. He was once a powerful existence within the Grand Line. Even with his head becoming flat due to Garp's fist and losing his drill, he is still someone to be feared. And it's not just Don Chinjiao. There are many pirates in this country, and the HAPO Navy, which has once sailed on the Grand Line, has over 1,000 pirates. These pirates are not as strong as Don Chinjiao, but they are still to be feared, as the core members of this pirate group had trained in Hasoken, which is a technique by which they can manipulate vibration. All of them are pirates that were known in the Grand Line and not something that West Blue pirates can defeat. Ross's pirate ship is getting closer to the harbor of Kano country. Sure enough, it is a country of pirates, so many pirate ships, so blatantly anchored at the harbor. Looking at the port of Kano country, where a large number of pirate ships with pirate flags hanging onto them were anchored, Robin looked calm on the outside, but she is still a little surprised. Ross stood next to her and looked at the harbor in the distance and smiled. Maybe it's rare in West Blue, but on the Grand Line, such countries are everywhere. Has Captain ever been to the Grand Line? Robin was slightly surprised as she turned to look at Ross. She could keenly sense Ross's tone. This level of understanding of the Grand Line was as if he had seen it with his own eyes. Ross touched his chin and said, "You can say that." As his boat slowly moves towards the dock of the harbor, it caused stir on the dock. The ghost hand pirates are famous in West Blue Sea. The pirates on lot of pirate ships, as well as the workers on the dock, looked at the pirate ship that was coming in, and they all looked shocked. It's the Ghost Hand pirates. I heard that Ghost Hand Ross had killed a Marine Rear Admiral and his bounty got higher. He now has 64 million berries bounty on his head, which is 5 million more than the Double Sword pirate group. A lot of pirates whispered as they looked at the Ghost Hand pirates ship. What the world government has published in the newspaper, that Ghost Hand Ross ambushed the Marines that were in the process of pursuing another pirate group, was for the purpose of deceiving ordinary people. Which pirate would be so idle to voluntarily attack Marines? There is no doubt that Marines must have taken the initiative to pursue Ross. However, Ross's strength was beyond their expectations, and even a Marine Rear Admiral couldn't deal with him and got killed on the spot. The increase of bounty to 64 million berries is not something casually done. Naturally, there are many people who are not afraid of the Ghost Hand pirates entering the dock. A guy with a plain face was looking at them. He was a sailor to others, but in the dark, he is one of the official members of the HAPO Navy of the Kano country. Ghost Hand pirates, a heavyweight guy came today. The people of the HAPO Navy watched the Ghost Hand pirates enter the harbor, chatting and laughing with each other with cigarettes and wine, without worrying about any trouble. Even if pirates came from the Grand Line with bounty as high as 80 million or even hundreds of millions of berries, they would not dare to cause any trouble in the Kano country, saying nothing of the Ghost Hand pirates who have never been to the Grand Line. To provoke the HAPO Navy pirates, it will be useless for the troublemaker to even hide on the Grand Line, as they would be found and killed. You guys stay here and guard the ship. When the ship docked at the harbor's terminal, Ross gave an order to the handymen and took Robin to the shore. Several handymen did not show any puzzled expression. Although they have some strength, the Ghost Hand pirate flag hung on the sail represents strength, and there are not many guys who would dare to come here and make trouble with them. Ross glanced at the many eyes that looked at him and calmly took Robin out of the harbor and headed deeper inside Kano country. Although Kano country is a country of pirates, it is different from Hancock's Amazon Lily Island. It is not a country that makes a living by looting others. This country is one of the largest lumber trading sites in West Blue. Entering the Kano country, he can see all kinds of handymen sweating while carrying wooden logs of different colors and gasping for breath as they passed through the streets. Where is the ship wood trading center? Ross casually found a short-clothed handyman, took out a silver coin from his pocket and flexed his finger, and the silver coin made a crisp sound, flipped a few times in the air and fell back into his hand. The handyman saw the gun and sword hanging at Ross's waist and was a little bit afraid, but when he saw the silver coin in Ross's hands, his eyes immediately lit up and he said, "The ship wood trading center is on the south bank, and here is the wood trading center for house use." Ding! Ross's thumb flicked and the silver coin flew again, falling into the hands of the handyman. Then he took Robin and turned towards the south bank. Walking on the streets of Kano country, although he can't say that pirates can be seen everywhere, There are quite a few people carrying guns and swords, but most of them were calm and poised. Even if any fight appears in the street, they will be quickly stopped by the Kano country's guards and brought to the open area for them to freely resolve it. Kano country does not prevent a foreign pirate from killing, but they are not allowed to fight in places where there are residents. It is necessary for them to fight in an open place and they will collect the corpse for free. To build influence, a force maintaining order is necessary. Robin walked down the street and looked at the scenery with a thoughtful expression. Kano country is the area where lumber trades occur. Naturally, there will be a lot of pirates who come here to buy wood for their ships. It is impossible for the general guards to defeat pirates on their own, but forming a huge official pirate force of their own is different. It seems like this should be the case, and it is this world's flaw. The government and marine don't take any action on this place and ignore it. Ross ridiculed. Pirates are cancer, world government and marine are also cancers. They only maintain order and not justice, while justice and order are very different. Along the way, there weren't any pirates who dared to provoke Ross and Robin. The identity of Devil Child Robin, although recognized by many pirates, but once they see Ross walking in front of Robin, these pirates shrunk their neck. In the recent rumors, wherever Ghost Hand Ross went, then no matter if one is a pirate or marine, all of them are killed without mercy. He is one of the most dangerous existence of West Blue. Soon, Ross and Robin arrived at the South Bank. The scenery here was completely different from the West Bank. A large amount of wood piled up everywhere, many of them were extremely large. It is not something that ordinary people can move. More than a dozen people are needed to move even one of them. People are transporting wood for ships and they are all under a giant wheel cart and trolleys, and a group of people are pushing them towards the beach. It's Ghost Hand Ross. Some people recognized Ross and many pirates were shocked on seeing them. They hid on the side as no one wants to be killed by this pirate, marine killing machine. Many pirates escaped, but someone still took the initiative to come up to him. It was an old man with a hunchback. He is one of the people selling boats here. Do you require wood for ships? We have the best types of wood for making keels and masts, and we have many types here. Take me there to have a look. Ross didn't know much about ships, but he learned more about it from Robin. So now he has the basic idea about ships and he could talk to the old man with a hunchback. The old man with a hunchback led Ross, pointing in front towards a few huge pieces of wood, saying, "That is red oak, there to the side is iron thorn wood, and then there is iron sandalwood. To build speed-based ship, what type of wood is best?" Ross looked at a few huge pieces of wood and asked, showing neither approval or disapproval. The hunchback old man heard the question and said without thinking, "If you are in need of speed, iron pear wood is naturally the best to make the keel. The mast can be of iron sandalwood, enough to withstand huge wind." Ross thought a little and looked at Robin next to him and continued to ask, "What kind of wood is needed for a ship of about 40 meters? 40 meters? The old man with hunchback laughed and said, "That's really good. I just acquired a few matching goods. The price is very cheap. Together with the mast, 9 million berries will do. Would you like to take a look?" 9 million berries? Ross took a moment and stopped. The hunchback old man is embarrassed. This price is already very cheap. No, it doesn't feel too expensive, but it's too cheap. Ross interrupted the hunchback old man, put a hand on his chin and after a little thought, asked, "Do you have treasure tree Adam wood here?" Treasure tree Adam should be the best wood in the whole world. The original Straw Hat Luffy's Thousand Sunny Go is made of treasure tree Adam wood as the main material, and its speed and toughness are almost impeccable. Puff. The hunchback old man is pondering what kind of wood is going to be recommended by Ross. When he heard Ross, he almost squirted the water he drank a moment ago. Treasure tree Adam. Do you know how high the price of that wood is? I ask if you have it. Ross asked calmly. The hunchback old man scratched his head and hesitated. Finally, he said, "I don't have it here, but there is a branch of treasure tree Adam wood. The length is about 41 meters. I heard that it will be auctioned in 2 days. But I can remind you that without a 1 or 200 million berries, you shouldn't even think of buying it." The old man saw that Ross had completely lost interest in his woods. He couldn't help but mutter as he saw that Ross did not respond, and then shook his head and walked away. Ross looked at Robin next to him and smiled. "I didn't expect our luck to turn out so well. I could get the branch of treasure tree Adam. And the size is right, but the money may not be enough." Robin also heard of the name of treasure tree Adam, and as an archaeologist, she knows that this type of wood is the very best this sea has to offer. Ross smiled and shook his head. The money will be enough. There are pirates here everywhere. Isn't there another 2 days? Let's go and find the polar bear pirates first. Marinette 4 Branch Base. Since Bastille was killed by Ross in the Kingdom of Smale, the Rear Admiral post has been vacant and the last remaining captain has temporarily taken the post 1 month ago. A month ago, a battleship dispatched by Marine Headquarters arrived at the T4 Branch Base and took over the affairs of the T4 Branch Base. The highest officer was Rear Admiral from the Marine Headquarters, Onigumo. Headquarters Rear Admiral will usually become Vice Admiral of any branch there placed, but Onigumo's mission is to take full responsibility for Ghost Hand Ross and exterminate him, so it's just a mission for him and not a demotion. Base Office. Onigumo is sitting behind the desk and reviewing the documents. For him who is a Headquarters Rear Admiral, it's easy to handle a branch base. And just as he read a document and prepared to sign it, the Den Den Mushi on the table suddenly rang. Onigumo connects the telephone. This is the T4 Branch Base. Reporting to Onigumo Rear Admiral, the scout of our division has found the traces of Ghost Hand Ross in Kano country. How do you want to deal with it? Upon hearing the discovery of Ghost Hand Ross, Onigumo's expression suddenly became serious. He looked at the sea map on the table and found Kano country. Kano country is at least 3 days away from the T4 Branch Base. There was a branch base which is only a day away from the Kano country, but even if he deploys all of the Marines in that base, it will obviously not going to be enough to deal with Ghost Hand Ross. There is no way to assemble a strong force in such a short time, and Kano country is also a very troublesome place. Onigumo hesitated for a while before ordering that they will not be taking any action rashly and they will temporarily observe Ghost Hand Ross. After that he hangs the Den Den Mushi while thinking of a solution. Soon, his eyes flashed. It seemed that he had thought of something. Kano country. Here is the entertainment industry of Kano country. Many well-dressed people are coming and going, and there is also a group of pirates passing by. On the top floor of a 3-floor bar, it seems to be much more harmonious than the chaotic scene at the bottom. There are many women in the center who were exposed to the waist and swaying, and many people in the outer ring on the left and right side were drinking. Suddenly, the door on the 3rd floor was pushed open and a young man with a leather cap followed by a girl with a black shawl came in. Due to the loud commotion everywhere in the hall, Ross and Robin walked in and did not attract any attention. After a single glance at the hall, Ross sat down in a seat not far from the door and casually examined the scene in the hall. 1, 2, 3. Robin stood next to Ross, staring calmly at the scene in the hall, and quickly leaned over to Ross's ear and whispered, "Almost all of them are here." "Okay." Ross nodded and regained his gaze, but he was not in any hurry to get started. Instead, he took a glass of champagne from the waiter and took a sip. Robin stood quietly waiting, not urging and disturbing. She always knew what she should do. Ross took a couple of sips from the champagne and put the cup on the table next to him. When he was about to stand up, a drunk man suddenly leaned over and swept his eyes on Robin, smiled. "Kid, your female companion looks pretty good. How about letting me borrow her to play?" Compared with the women in the hall, most of the women here are no older than 14 or 15. Undoubtedly 17-year-old Robin looks quite mature and beautiful compared to them. Robin heard such rude words, but she did not show any expression on her face and continued to stand calmly behind Ross, but her eyes revealed a slight contempt in them. "Go away." Ross sat there and spit out a word without lifting his head. "What?" The drunk pirate stared at him and took a moment to understand Ross's words before slowly grinning and lowering his body, trying to see Ross's face, and said, "I haven't heard such bold words in a long time. I am a member of Polar Bear Pirates, you kid." When he spoke, his head was already low and the position of Ross sitting there was close to his head, and he saw Ross's face clearly. His voice gradually became weak and eventually stopped. Oh, it turned out to be the Polar Bear Pirates. Ross's lowered hat was raised a little, his eyes calmly looking at the pirate in front of him, and he said his abrupt words. You are." The pirate, who was completely drunk, saw Ross's face and he was instantly half awake. As a member of the Polar Bear Pirates, he had seen the bounty of the Ghost Hand Ross, and he also knows that the bounty placed on his head is ranked first in the entire West Blue. His eyes were full of fear, his legs could not help but become a little soft, and he wanted to turn his head to inform his own captain, but his body was stiff and unable to move. "I am planning to talk to you about your captain." Ross slowly stood up and pulled out a gun from his waist before pointing the gun at the pirate's head under his scared gaze. Bang! A gun firing sound resounded. The entire hall was quiet for a moment, then chaos emerged. The captain of Polar Bear Pirates, after hearing the gun sound, turned to look at the direction of the sound, just to see one of his crew members fell back to the ground, and he also saw the face of Ross, who was standing up. "You are," he glanced a little and lightly narrowed his eyes. On the street outside, the gun sound suddenly came from the third floor of the bar, and the people nearby were shocked. Many people looked up to the third floor of the bar after the gunfire sound and soon saw a large group of people fleeing from it. Gunfire? What happened? Which pirate is making trouble here? Just as many people were amazed and confused, when the patrols in the distance heard the sound of gunfire coming from the third floor of the bar, and in that moment a figure flew out from above. Bang! The figure on the street is not a human figure but a monster bear in a human form. The claws all strangely twisted, and his face still has a terrified expression on it. Suddenly, the people on the street were shocked and they all ran away to the sides of the street, making space, and their gazes turned astonished as they recognized the figure. That is, Captain of Polar Bear Pirates, 45 million berries bounty pirate. How could he be in such a horrible condition? Some passers-by recognized the half-man and half-bear-like existence and could not help but suck in cold air, and some looked at the top of the bar with horror in their eyes. Who can make the pirate with a bounty of 45 million berries so miserable? Whiz! Just as they were horrified, a figure jumped from the top of the bar and walked directly to the captain of the Polar Bear Pirate Group, who was trying to get up. Captain of the Polar Bear Pirate Group coughed up blood and could no longer maintain his form. The white hair on his body quickly subsided and he turned into a middle-aged pirate wearing a jacket. "Damn, you bastard!" The middle-aged pirate, who has changed into his human form, showed a crazed and fearful expression on his face. He did not ask for mercy. Instead, he struggled to pull out the handgun from his waist and shoot at Ross. Ross's eyes were calm and he fiercely stamped his feet. "Gotcha! Gotcha!" The chest of the middle-aged pirate caved in and a large amount of blood spewed out from his mouth, and the hand holding the guns finally fell to the ground. The many passers-by next to him, who had not yet been awoken from the shock of seeing the captain of the Polar Bear Pirates, saw the indifferent figure stepping on the body of Captain Polar Bear and could not help but swallow their saliva. That person seems to be Ghost Hand Ross, captain of the Polar Bear Pirates, who had the bounty of 45 million berries and has a zone devil fruit power that turned him into a bear, lost so miserably to Ross, and it seemed like Ross did not put any effort in defeating him. The pedestrians around, whether it is the nobles of Kano country or some pirates who were enjoying life and drinking, can't help but retreat upon seeing this scene. Out of the way, out of the way! What happened here? The patrol guard of Kano country quickly arrived to the street, and after seeing the body lying at the center of the street and the youth wearing the leather cap, their faces change. Ghost Hand Ross. The body on the ground was a little non-human, but after careful examination, they also recognized that it was the body of the captain of the Polar Bear Pirates. Did Ghost Hand Ross fought with the Polar Bear Pirates here? The patrol captain was a little nervous. This level of a pirate is not something he can handle. If there is a civilian or a nobleman who is injured because of this fight, then it will be very troublesome. Fortunately, after asking some questions from the surrounding people, he found that no aristocrats and civilians were injured, and the patrol captain was relieved. Although there are rules in the entertainment street that prohibits fighting and killing here, such rules are only to restrict ordinary pirates and protect the civilians and nobles of Kano country. By the time the chaos in the entertainment street subsided, Ross and Robin had already left, and as Ghost Hand Ross said nothing, the killing of the captain of the Polar Bear Pirates became a hot topic of discussion on the same day. Killing the captain of Polar Bear Pirate Group, Ross got 15 points of talent proficiency. He didn't intend to keep it and directly assigned them to the distortion fruit. After adding 15 points of talent proficiency, the total proficiency of distortion fruit has reached 190 points, and the range of its effect has become much larger. For Ross's current physical strength, he can fully bear the increase in power of distortion fruit, but he may not be able to use it flexibly when it reached around 230 or 240 points. The wealth of the Polar Bear Pirates is quite a lot, more than 30 million berries. After destroying the Polar Bear Pirates, Ross took over all of the Polar Bear Pirate Group's wealth and searched their pirate ship, which together had more than 30 million berries. Robin looked at the box of money piled up in front and said, "It should be that all the treasures that Polar Bear Pirate Group looted during this time have just been disposed of in Kano country." Ross nodded. "There are no such things as gold and silver jewels in there, all of them are berries, so he can save his time." Now we have more than 100 million berries, but if you want to buy the branch of the treasure tree atom, I am afraid it will not be enough. Robin understands the worth of the treasure tree atom. Ross threw the money-filled box into the cabin, so we will have enough. He does not bother to do things like looting civilians, but robbing pirates is a different matter. If he lacks money, he will rob another pirate. Just in a day and a half, Ross broke the rules of killing in Kano country and started slaughtering all the pirates in Kano country. A total of 6 large pirate groups were killed by his hands and small pirate groups defeated were countless. At first, Ross didn't plan to behave recklessly and begin a slaughter. The result was that he didn't expect that after he killed 3 pirate groups, a large number of smaller pirate groups will collude together to form a giant single group and secretly spreading the rumor that he wanted to kill all the pirates, uniting every single one of them against him. Naturally, there is no need to mention more about what happened to them. The pirate groups assembled has 2 pirates that had 30 million bounties on their head, but for Ross and Robin who make their mission to kill these pirates, there was nothing the pirates could do. When Ross started to kill them and successively sank 2 pirate ships, the color of the sea on the shore became blood red and the temporary alliance of the pirates collapsed completely. This incident has undoubtedly alerted the official forces of Kano country, but Kano country allowed the situation to develop and did not intervene. After slaughtering a large number of pirates, Ross also made up nearly 300 million berries. Other than that, he also got 25 points of talent proficiency. For the allocation of the 25-point talent proficiency, Ross did not hesitate and directly put the 25 proficiency points into the distortion fruit, and by doing that the total proficiency of the distortion fruit became 215 points. If the physical strength is strong enough, the ability to improve distortion fruit is undoubtedly the most profitable. The 25 proficiency points have enhanced the ability of his distortion fruit. Currently, he is standing in the cabin of his own ship. If the ability of distortion fruit is applied to the hull, the entire ship can be covered. In other words, if Ross is facing a battleship now, as long as he can reach the battleship by using Geppo, moonwalk, he can use his fruit's ability to instantly distort the whole battleship. And at this level of power of distortion, the general artillery and even the large caliber artillery on any pirate ship will not affect Ross and he will be able to block them easily. Unless it is heavy artillery, there is no threat to Ross. The power of distortion fruit and my physical strength have finally reached equilibrium again. Now I have to raise my agility enhancement as soon as possible. Feeling the power of distortion flowing within his body, Ross muttered. Now, even if he faced 2 or 3 people of Rear Admiral Bastille's level, they will not be his opponent. Even if they uses the armament Haki, if their Haki cultivation is weak, they may not be able to block his present distortion power. But in terms of agility and speed, his current speed is only a little faster than Bastille. If he meets a speed-type opponent or who can use observation Haki, he will easily fall into a troublesome situation. In the first place, he is a strength-based fighter and not speed-based. Nowadays, due to the rapid increase in his physical strength and fruit's ability, his speed is somewhat unable to keep up with his progress and it becomes a weak point. Captain, the auction will start in an hour. Robin knocked on the door and walked into Ross's room, reminding Ross. The auction time and location of the Treasure Tree Adams branch, which have long been inquired by Robin, are the finale items placed on the auction by the Kano country's officials. Let's go. Ross turned around and saw that Robin was sprouting 4 hands and carrying 4 huge suitcases. He couldn't help but smile and took 2 suitcases from her hand. Captain is really considerate. Robin grinned. After being with him for so long, she was familiar with Ross's personality and occasionally showed some playful behavior. No, it's just that the 4 arms are too eye-catching. Ross grinned and walked by Robin. Robin's mouth slightly curled into a smile. The extra 2 arms turned into petals and disappeared before she put on a hat and followed Ross on the shore and walked toward the treasure wood auction site. Kano country receives some valuable wood every year. These woods are very expensive and often difficult to sell, so they are generally put together in large auctions for trade. The auction site was located in the open-air timber area on the south bank of Kano country. When Ross and Robin arrived, there were already a large number of people gathered there, who were mostly merchants from all over the world, with some pirates mixed in. There are a large number of various types of woods on the site, the most conspicuous of which is undoubtedly a giant wood of about 40 meters long. It is the branch of Treasure Tree Atom, which is regarded as best in hardness or flexibility and its toughness is above that of steel. The branch of the Treasure Tree Atom It shouldn't be the one that was used to build the 1,000 Sunny Go in the original work. Looking at the branch of the most conspicuous treasure tree atom from far away, his eyes flashed with suspicion, but he shook his head. How can it be so coincidental, not to mention that it's the 11th year of Great Age of Pirates? After Ross retracted his gaze, he found a place on the periphery and sat down. Soon, the timber trade began and the auctioneer in a suit walked onto the stage, first introducing a 5 or 6 meter long crimson wooden stake. It was the trunk of crimson oak. Whether it is used to make tables or chairs or sofas, it is very luxurious. Ross is not interested in this. He calmly listened as some nobles shouted, bidding for it. 5 million berries once, 5 million berries twice. Deal. The man in charge of the auction delightedly dropped the hammer and began to introduce the second rare wood. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours passed and occasionally there were some rare types of wood for ships, but no matter the size or quality it was not as good as the branch of the treasure tree atom. Ross just looked at a few of them before looking away. Biddings for treasure wood of ships were comparatively fewer than furniture wood, as most nobles were not interested in wood for ships. Finally, one by one all kinds of woods in the auction site were traded away and it was the turn of the last item. The wood was dark red and exudes an ancient aura. Finally, it's the turn of today's best item. The man in charge has already been speaking continuously for a few hours and he was a little tired, but at this time he forcefully cheers himself up and waved his finger to the last piece of wood. There is an island that has experienced countless wars. Although the island was hit by a hail of bullets, and the residents of that island died and the city also changed into ruins, a big tree survived and stood tall. There are only a few such trees in the world and the most powerful of them is called treasure tree atom. It's right. It's the branch of the treasure tree atom. The starting price, 100 million berries. As the suit-wearing man screamed out the word 100 billion berries, the auction site was quiet and only some sounds of discussion could be heard and no one immediately bid. The man in the suit was a little anxious and worried that the branch of treasure tree atom would not be sold, but finally, someone bid. 100 million berries. It was a businessman sitting in the front row and he only called the base price. 110 million. Some people started to bid and all of them were businessmen. They all thought that if the branch of this treasure tree atom were sold in the right hands, they will be able to easily earn more than 100 million berries. Several merchants started to bid on the branch and slowly the price of treasure tree atom's branch reached 150 million berries. This price has already caused many businessmen to retreat. The price is too high for them and the risk of reselling is too great. In the event of any mistakes, they will not be able to earn much. 200 million. Ross finally bid, suddenly raising the price from 150 million berries to 200 million berries. The nobles and businessmen present were a little shocked. The price of 200 million berries, for them is already somewhat unbearable. At the same time, some pirates who wanted the treasure tree atom branch but didn't have the money and planned to snatch it halfway also looked in the direction of the voice as they wanted to see the person who called this price. As that person, Ghost Hand Ross. When some pirates' eyes fell on Ross, they were shocked. Many pirates looked at each other and saw the fear in the other's eyes. No matter which merchant and noble bought the branch of this treasure tree atom, they all planned to let them go halfway before robbing it, but if Ross is the one who bought it, then the best ship wood is as good as gone for them. Robbing Ross. What a joke. The water on the shore of West Blue is still bright red now. Maybe some of them would dare to steal from Ross, but it is definitely not going to be them. In addition to pirates, those businessmen and nobles did not directly recognize Ross, but when they heard the people around them, they quickly reacted and looked different. The guy is a pirate, Ghost Hand Ross. Can a pirate even come up with so much money? The price of 200 million berries itself is already a bit high and the bounty price on Ghost Hand Ross is also very high considering that he is one of the most dangerous pirates in the West Blue. They obviously have a lot to think about. Ghost Hand Ross. The expression on the face of the man in charge changed greatly. There are a lot of pirates here. He knows that, but he didn't expect a pirate to bid in the auction and he bid 200 million berries to buy the branch of the treasure tree atom. There are too many unstable factors in this situation. However, he also thought that the HAPO Navy of the Kano country is in charge of the auction site and is fully responsible for it, and he was relieved. In addition to the merchants, nobles, and pirates, there are still some people that have been stealthily staring at Ross from the beginning. When they saw Ross bidding for the branch of treasure tree atom, these people all showed different expressions on their faces and quietly retreated behind the crowd and disappeared. 1 second, 2 seconds, except for some muffled discussions, the auction site remained quiet. No matter whether it was a businessman or a nobleman, no one bids again. 200 million berries, deal. The man in charge shouted a few times, seeing that no one dared to compete with Ross, and finally took a deep breath before closing the deal. At the same time as the hammer fell, the man responsible for the auction site immediately came to Ross to talk with Ross and invited him. "Sir, please come here for the delivery." "Good." Ross calmly stood up and followed. The people responsible for the order of auction site were wearing Kano country's HAPO Navy special uniform. Facing Ross, they're very serious and vigilant. All of them hold weapons. Obviously, the existence of Ross West Blue is very high and they do not dare to let their guard down. 200 million berries, check it out. Under Ross's signal, Robin opened the 3 boxes behind her and quickly took out 200 million berries. The person in charge of the auction was slightly startled as he didn't expect Ross to actually pay the price of 200 million berries, but when he recalled that Ross seemed to have killed a lot of pirates these days, it was not a surprise that he has gotten so much money. Since he is willing to pay, then everything is fine. The person in charge relaxed a lot and he smiled. He came forward and quickly counted the stacked berries. "I have counted, and there is no problem. The branch of the treasure tree Adam is yours." Harbor. Under a lot of people's greedy gaze, after the huge treasure tree Adam branch was firmly tied, Ross reached out and pushed it into the water. 200 million berries treasure tree Adam branch. No matter who it was, they were a bit jealous, but Ross slaughtering pirates a few days ago is still remembered by them, and even if there are any thoughts about it, most of the pirate will wait and see before taking any action. He got the branch of treasure tree Adam. If he builds a powerful pirate ship, I am afraid that Marine will never be able to stop him again. Oh, I don't think Marines will let him easily make a treasure tree Adam ship. Maybe the army that encircled the island is already on the way. Many people looked at Ross's ship from afar while discussing spiritedly. Ross did not pay attention to the gazes around him. After pushing the branch into the water, he let the handyman on the ship untie the rope, pull up the anchor and slowly leave the port. Go to the shipwright town. On the east side of Kano country, there is an island which is the famous shipwright town, one of the most famous places of West Blue where ships are built. This town doesn't have any shipbuilders, only shipbuilder apprentice. He already has the most important keel of the new ship, while the rest of the materials are available in the shipwright town, and buying those materials with the remaining 90 million berries will be more than enough. On the deck, Ross looked at the distant scenery and said, "When we have a new ship, we can finally step into the Grand Line." Grand Line. Robin stood by his side and there was a glimmer of light in her sea-like eyes. For her, the only thing her heart longed for is to find the poneglyph stels hidden all over the world and to understand the secrets of the Void Century. Poneglyph, from the information that she has secretly collected over the years, they are mostly in the Grand Line. Grand Line, also known as the Pirate Grave, is naturally very dangerous. From time to time, there will be news that some of the strongest pirates of the sea were thoroughly defeated in the Grand Line, but that is a place that she must go to achieve her dream. She silently glanced at the back of Ross. She didn't know why, but she has a feeling that if she continues to follow Ross, she will be able to achieve her dream. As the ship traveled towards the shipwright island, the Kano country gradually became blurred in their field of vision and they gradually left the island far behind. Just as the Kano country's island gradually turned into a small black dot, from the direction of Kano country, there was a blurry shadow of a ship following them. Robin quickly discovered the ship that was quickly catching up to them. "Captain Ross, we seem to have been targeted." "Oh, Marines?" "It seems to be the HAPO Navy of the Kano country." Robin and Ross came to the stern and looked at the ship that was catching up to them. Robin's eyes flashed. As the ship approached, its shape became clearer and clearer. Although it was huge, it was not a Marine's battleship. "Right." Ross looked at the pirate flag of the ship and did not reveal any emotion on his face. He said calmly, "After all, it is the country of pirates. How could they let me take away the treasure tree Adam branch which is worth 200 million berries so easily?" Ross's ship was a light sailing ship, but because of the heavy treasure tree Adam's branch, it greatly affected the ship's speed. It was not long before it was caught up by Kano country's pirate ship. On the pirate ship of the Kano country, there were a lot of pirates holding weapons. Perhaps the other pirates were scared of the slaughter done by Ross and they would not dare to ask for any trouble, but these pirates were different as their boss has been on the Grand Line. For them, any West Blues pirate is like a normal person without any powers. Sure enough, I can't run fast with a heavy piece of wood tied to my ship. The younger brother Boo with 3 axes on his back and the vice leader of the HAPO Navy, Sai, was standing on the deck, as they grinned while looking at the distant ghost hand pirate ship. The vice leader Sai took out a small long-handled blade, Basento, and stood in front of Boo. His expression looked cold and serious. Leader Don Chinjiao is not here, so he is in charge of the ship. Today is the 11th year of the Great Age of Pirates. Sai has not taken over the position of the HAPO Navy and Boo is just an ordinary cadre, but both have followed leader Don Chinjiao on the Grand Line. Reporting. The enemy ship has entered the firing range. As the 2 ships got closer, a member of the HAPO Navy came forward to report. Do not fire. Sai shook his head and said, we don't want to break the piece of wood, it's something worth 200 million berries. Boo yelled at his brother. The treasure tree atom branch should not be that easy to break, but forget it, they won't be able to run away even if we do not fire. The distance between the 2 ships was getting closer. The 2 sides do not need to use a telescope as they can see the people on both sides of the ship. On the bow of the ship is the 13th generation members of the HAPO Navy, Sai, and Boo, but I did not find leader Don Chinjiao among them. Robin scouted as she reported to Ross. Ross nodded. Leader Don Chinjiao, who has the bounty of 500 million berries, is not someone he can deal with now. If Don Chinjiao is on the ship, he can only find a way to destroy the HAPO Navy ship and flee. If Don Chinjiao is not here, Ross's eyes flashed with a cold light. He looked at the ship of the HAPO Navy in the distance and judged the distance between the 2 ships. His tone was calm while giving orders. Keep the distance, I will come back when I am done. By the time Ross's voice echoed in Robin's ear, he had already arrived in the air, lifting his foot in the air and taking 2 steps. He crossed the sea directly and landed on the HAPO Navy ship. Under the astonished gazes of the pirates of the HAPO Navy, Ross fell on their deck and landed smoothly. What? Geppo, Moonwalk, Boo and Sai turned their heads and looked at Ross. They showed a little surprise on their faces. Following Don Chinjiao to the Grand Line, their knowledge was not too light. They are still able to recognize Geppo, Moonwalk. Geppo, Moonwalk, is a very difficult ability in Marine's Rokushiki. Even in Marine, only the captains and above can use Geppo, Moonwalk, and Ross using Geppo, Moonwalk, left them a little surprise. But, even if he can use Geppo, Moonwalk, it's too arrogant of him to come to their ship alone. Although Ross is known in the West Blue as one of the most dangerous pirates, it is limited to West Blue and it is nothing to them who have been to the Grand Line. West Blue's most dangerous pirate, your courage is really not small. Let me see how much skill you have to back that courage. Boo took down an axe from his back and indicated to the numerous ordinary pirates to draw back before he grinned and rushed towards Ross. Sai originally planned to do it himself, but he saw that Boo had already gone up and he didn't plan on stopping him. He folded his hands on his chest and stood in the same place. However, just as Boo was about to reach Ross, Ross suddenly stepped on his feet and a strange force fell directly on the ship's board. Kacha. Kacha. The power of the distortion fruit was centered on the area where Ross put his foot before spreading rapidly in all directions and the entire ship strangely distorted in the middle. Damn it. This guy wants to break our ship. Boo was dumbfounded for a moment before he immediately became angry. He jumped up while roaring and charged towards Ross, the axe in his hand maliciously falling upon Ross. Facing Boo's axe, Ross did not show any fear and his eyes were calm as he indifferently raised his left hand to directly greet the incoming axe. Seeing Ross dares to block his axe with his bare hands, Boo snorted in his heart and relentlessly increased his strength, intending to chop Ross's hand in 2. However, when the axe touched Ross's hand, the imaginary scene of blood spilling and the arm being cut off did not appear. Instead, the entire axe got stuck in the air by a strange force. Ross's spread out his fingers and he grasped the blade of the axe with one hand and the other hand turned over and twisted. The steel axe looked like a bamboo pole as it was being distorted into a spiral shape that continues to spread along the shaft of the axe. Not good. Boo was shocked and he did not hesitate to release his hand from the axe while his other hand clenched into a fist and he fiercely waved it down towards Ross. This punch seems to be ordinary, but when it was thrown, it was wrapped in a strange force as if it contains a force that is irresistible. It has appeared. Its 8 punches Hashokan of Sir Boo. Many of the HAPO Navy troops in the distance holding swords and guns in their hands looked shocked seeing this scene. As an ordinary member of the HAPO Navy, They were not qualified to practice Hashoken. Hashoken is a fighting style that only the core members of the HAPO Navy can train. Not long ago, Bu used Hashoken to kill a big pirate with a bounty of more than 40 million berries. Faced with Bu's Hashoken, Ross's expression did not change. He threw away the distorted axe before his 5 fingers clenched into a fist which was wrapped with distortion power, and then he welcomed the incoming fist. Bang! The moment when Ross and Bu's fists collided together, the vibration force and power of distortion produced a fierce sound and force, with their fists being the center, just like a cannonball exploding in the air. HAPO Navy's cadres and leaders practices Hashoken punches, which are essentially the manipulation of vibration force that can ignore the armor and other defenses. Ross's power of distortion can also distort steel and ignore other defenses. However, the Hashoken is a practiced technique, whereas the power of distortion is derived from the distortion effect of a devil fruit. Together with the various reinforcement of the talent system, Ross's power of distortion is still far stronger than Bu's Hashoken. Bang! The force of vibration and the force of distortion in the air was frozen for less than a second before the vibration force is forcibly defeated by Ross's force of distortion. And the force of distortion continues towards Bu's fist all the way up, and with various cracking sounds, his arm was completely distorted. Ah! Bu screamed, his eyes showing pain and horror. He didn't expect that his Hashoken has not only failed to ignore Ross's defense, but instead, he was defeated by Ross's power. Many members of the HAPO Navy looked at this scene and they all revealed incredulous looks. How is it possible? Sir Bu's Hashoken was actually defeated in close combat. What did that guy do? Bu. When Sai, who was holding a halberd in the distance, saw this scene, his face changed. He thought that Bu might not be Ross's opponent, but he didn't expect Bu to lose this quickly. The 2 moves made by Ross decided the entire fight and also took one arm of Bu. Such vicious means. Sai glanced at Bu's injury with traces of anger in his eyes, and then coldly looked at Ross before he walked towards him with his halberd. Don't. Ross says in a plain tone. It should be said that if you dare to rob me of something, you must be prepared to pay the price. He stepped on his feet and the hull began to collapse again. Sai muttered and ignored the destruction to the ship. Instead, he said with a blank face. That's right, it's true that Bu's skills are inferior to yours, and strong preys on weak, as it is the law of jungle and it is also the way of the world. However, to make my subordinates look like this, as the 13th generation head of the HAPO Navy, no matter what the enemy must pay the price. At the moment when his voice fell, he fiercely jumped forward and the halberd in his hand swung towards Ross. That's right, everyone is prey to the strong, Ross calmly said as he avoided the halberd by using Kami-e, while his fingers clenched into a fist and he punched towards Sai. Sai snorted while holding the halberd with both hands and placing the halberd in front of him, blocking Ross's fist. Bang! Ross's fist fell, and the power of distortion suddenly broke out, but Sai roared and shook both of his arms holding the halberd hard. He had resisted most of the force of distortion and the halberd showed only a slight distortion on it. It's blocked. That weird attack. The people of the HAPO Navy in the distance saw this scene with awe. Compared with Bu, the older brother Sai is much stronger. Not long ago, he even defeated a big pirate with a bounty of 100 million berries on the Grand Line. On the deck, perceiving a strange power on the halberd that blocked his power of distortion, Ross slowly spits out a word with a glimmer in his eyes. Armament Haki. For a trivial pirate to recognize Haki in West Blue Sea, you are really knowledgeable. Sai smirked and fiercely revolved the halberd while tightly gripping it with both hands before chopping down towards Ross, again and again, launching storm-like attacks. So what if you have devil fruit ability? It doesn't work in front of me. Really? After a little surprise, Ross's expression returned to a calm look. Armament Haki's ability can certainly withstand any devil fruit's ability, but Armament Haki is also divided into ranks. Sai in front of him can only surround himself with Haki and he can't do the hardening part. Wanting to ignore his distortion fruit abilities with only this level of skill is a big joke. Between the devil's fruit and Haki, which is strong and which is weak, has never reached a conclusion. The weak fruit ability cannot overcome Haki, but a weak Haki cannot resist an extremely strong devil's fruit ability. In the face of Sai's storm-like offensive, Ross did not use Kami-e, paper drawing, to dodge the attacks, but he clenched his fingers into a fist. The power of distortion gathered on the fist. Distortion impact. He hit Sai's halberd attacks in the sky with one punch and the force of distortion burst out, crushing every attack in an instant. His punch hit the center of the halberd's blade. Sai only felt that a powerful and strange force was fiercely rushing towards him along the blade. Even if he tried his best to push his armament Haki to its limit, he still couldn't stop the blade from distorting and breaking. Bang! Eventually, the halberd in his hand was completely shattered and his body flew upside down. The sleeves on his arms were turned into pieces and his fingers were slightly shaken as they suffered some damage. It turns out that this is your full strength. Then I really underestimated you. His face became a little gloomy and he tightly clenched his trembling fingers. In that case, I'll take this fight seriously now. Bujao, Gen. Sai angrily roared as he fiercely rushed towards Ross. Instead of waving his fist, he leapt in the air, turning over one of his leg in midair, his heel surrounded by armament Haki, brought along powerful force as it kicked down on Ross's head. Without any fear, Ross used the power of distortion to its limit and without any reservation, rushed up towards Sai. Bang! The power of distortion and the armament Haki clashed with each other as a collision between feet and fist occurred and the air in surroundings started to crack similar to the tremor fruit. Gura Gura no Mi. Attack. And aftershocks spread out in all directions. Originally under Ross's power of distortion, the ship was severely damaged. Taking the center of the deck as the center where the two of them fighting, cracks like spider webs spread out in all directions. The deck is collapsing. Quickly back off. The people of the HAPO Navy watched as the cracks on the deck spread all the way to below their feet and panicked. They rushed back toward the rear. Some people even tightly held the guardrail at the edge of the deck. Boo stood on the side with one twisted arm, and couldn't help but feel shocked as he watched the aftermath of the confrontation between Ross and Sai. On one hand, he hadn't expected Ross to equally fight with Sai and on the other hand, he was surprised that the aftermath of their confrontation was so intense. Bang! Finally, with a roaring sound, the power of distortion and the vibration force completely blew up and Ross's fist shook as he took a small step back. Before Boo and the members of the HAPO Navy could become happy upon seeing this scene, Sai's foot issued cracking sound of joints twisting and his body flipped over, falling down 3 meters away on the ground. Crash! At last, the deck could no longer sustain it. With Ross and Sai as the center, it started to collapse. Ross jumped and retreated to the guardrail on the edge of the deck. Sai also jumped with the help of one leg to the guardrail on the other side. Sai's expression was extremely serious. Obviously, his leg that collided with Ross did not appear to be agile and it was slightly trembling. Although it was not completely broken in the previous collision, it was obviously severely twisted. Hashoken that have been passed down from generation to generation in the HAPO Navy seems to be pretty mediocre. Ross had a slightly sour muscle on his arm. He looked calmly at Sai across the deck as he forcibly stretched his, dispelling the feeling of numbness by force. Whiz! Having withstood the aftershocks of Hashoken technique, Ross leapt forward and rushed towards Sai, leaving an afterimage with his speed. This guy, Sai didn't expect Ross to withstand the aftermath of his Hashoken so easily. One of his legs still has no strength. He lowered his face and stared sternly at Ross who had rushed towards him. He clenched his right fist and punched in the direction of Ross. Bang! When two fists collided, Sai's Hashoken punch was obviously weaker than his leg attack and this attack is not as good as the previous one. Under Ross's punch, the guardrail on the bottom of his feet collapsed directly. His entire body was embedded in the wood. Kacha! Sai struggled hard to get out of the wood. He jumped back trying to avoid Ross's second punch but Ross did not give him any chance and rushed up directly. Whoosh! Ross punched and his single punch suddenly turned into countless fists like an asura with countless hands, as they fell upon Sai's face. Sai was shocked. Although he immediately captured Ross's original punch with weak observation Haki, he couldn't evade or counter it. He could only lay his arms on his chest and use armament Haki on them to resist Ross's punch. Bang! Ross punched between Sai's arms. Even though the distortion force on his fist would be weaker when applied with light distortion, it was a solid hit and Sai had no time to perform his Hashoken. His weak armament Haki was obviously not enough to withstand Ross's power of distortion and the muscles of his arms were distorted by distortion force. Hiss! Sai sucked in a breath of cold air. Even though he tensed his muscles and bones with all his might and retreated backward, the muscles on his arms still suffered severe sprains and bruises under the blow, and both of his arms immediately swelled. Undoubtedly, the terror of distortion fruit was revealed. Only a strong body and Haki are not enough to completely withstand the power of distortion, Every time you take a punch you will be damaged. No one can resist it. It is very similar to Whitebeard's tremor fruit. Gura gura no mi. This is bad. In the distance, Boo covered his injured arm and watched the scene with a sinking feeling in his heart, and he ordered the members of HAPO Navy who were next to him. Everyone attack. Kill that kid. Yes. Members of the HAPO Navy were frightened by the fact that Ross was suppressing Sai, but when they heard Boo's order, although their foreheads were overflowing with cold sweat, they gritted their teeth and rushed up with all kinds of swords and artillery in their hands. Bang. 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 The disordered bullets flew towards Ross, and some portable cannon spewed fire, shooting cannonballs towards Ross. Facing the bullets and cannonballs covering the entire sky, Ross did not retreat. Instead, his eyes slightly flashed, and he opened both of his arms and made a hugging movement in the void. Buzz. All the bullets and cannonballs that were fired at him had their flight trajectory strangely distort under Ross's region and shot towards Sai's head. Damn. Sai's pupils shrank and he tried to retreat, but one of his legs has not recovered yet and his arms had swollen big. His flexibility has already fallen to the bottom, and even though he can use a little observation Haki, he can't completely avoid all bullets and cannonballs. As blood splattered out in all directions, Sai's eyes widened and he held the guardrail of the deck, barely able to stand. Finished. I will give you a dignified death. Ross calmly looked at Sai, who was seriously injured and yet still standing. He drew out the named sword Happy Spring from his waist and stepped forward. Chi. Blood gushed out and Sai's body slowly fell to the ground. Silence. All the members of the HAPO Navy who were rushing up with knives, guns, and artillery in their hand froze in their place and the guns in their hands stopped shooting bullets. The time seemed to stop. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them and there was almost an expression of horror and disbelief on their faces. Sai is dead. They, who had even campaigned in Grand Line, though it was just an ordinary campaign. No one thought that Sai, the vice leader of the HAPO Navy, would die here, died in the trifling West Blue. You actually killed the vice leader, if this is known by that person. In the silence, they didn't know whose voice was trembling. Leader Don Chinjiao has many descendants, but the most outstanding and the most he was concerned about is Sai. He has long planned to train Sai into the 13th generation leader. Looking at Sai's position as substitute vice leader of the 13th generation of HAPO Navy at such a young age, everyone can see his position in the heart of leader Don Chinjiao. No one knows how Don Chinjiao will react to this. Perhaps the name of the man who has not traveled in the sea for many years has been gradually forgotten by the world, but how could they possibly not know, being members of the HAPO Navy? Don Chinjiao the Drill. Before the great age of pirates, he was an existence that was able to move unhindered in the sea, with a bounty of 500 million berries. How could this be? On the other hand, Boo looked at Sai's fallen body. His breathing was almost stagnant, and his heart almost stopped beating. Thinking of the scene of his grandfather's anger and madness, the cold sweat on his forehead is constantly dripping. He is afraid that even he may get torn into pieces by the angry old man. Boo looked at Ross's eyes, and his eyes flashed with horror, fear, disbelief and so on. You are finished, it wouldn't matter even if you hide in the Grand Line. You will be chased to the ends of the earth by him. Chi. A sword light flashed and Boo's voice stopped abruptly. Ross gently pulled out the tip of his sword and blood gushed out along the edge of the sword. He looked straight ahead and didn't look at Boo's fallen body. He spoke calmly. If someone wants to kill me, then let him come. How can anyone who fears neither the Marines nor the world's governments be afraid of an old man who has become rusted with time? After killing Sai and Boo in succession, even though Ross has spent a lot of stamina, he still has more than enough to deal with the remaining HAPO Navy members. As Sai and Boo were hidden under the reputation of HAPO Navy and leader Don Chinjiao, the bounty of 30 million berries and 20 million berries respectively was only symbolic. They gave Ross 10 points of talent proficiency as a reward. The whole ship was on the verge of crumbling after the big battle, but Ross searched it before the ship completely collapsed. To Ross's surprise, he got an unexpected surprise as he chose to not immediately destroy the ship, and instead chose to search it. Observation Haki's training notes. Sitting in his cabin, Ross looked at the notes which were less than 2 pages long in his hand with a glimmer of joy in his eyes. He didn't know whose notes these were, but there is no doubt that these notes will come in handy for him now. He must possess the power of Haki in this world. Although he knows the existence of Haki, he does not know the specific method to practice it. Now, the training method is in his hands. If he can comprehend observation Haki on his own by these notes, then he can save one free talent point in the talent system. The only regrettable thing is that the notes on the practice of armament Hakis were not found. Observation Haki, the sixth perception ability, which is independent of the other five senses, is a strong ability which is able to predict attacks from enemies outside the line of sight. The main points of its training are: looking at the 2 pages in his hand, Ross concentrated his thoughts and showed a serious and thoughtful look in his eyes. Strictly speaking, these 2 pages only contain main points of observation Haki and not a complete practice method, but because Ross has a certain understanding of the power of observation Haki, with these main points, he is able to explore and derive the complete practice direction. After carefully reading the 2 pages of notes, Ross remembered them all. After a moment of contemplation, he walked into his training room and began to transform the environment of the room. Quickly, Ross hung many ropes from the ceiling of his room, and various ball-shaped sandbags of different sizes hung below them. This is the environment layout of a practice room that was previously found on the HAPO Navy ship. It is obviously used to practice observation Haki, and Ross has recreated it in his own ship. Observation Haki and armament Haki are a potential force that everyone has, and they are qualified to practice it once they are strong enough. After arranging the room, Ross went to the center of the room and stood. After recording the positions of the sandbags around him, he closed his eyes and tried to concentrate all his energy and attention. Then he suddenly attacked and hit the nearest 4 sandbags, causing them to fly out. Whirl! Whirl! 4 sandbags suspended by ropes in the air were flying out. Because of the different sizes and the force and time of Ross's hitting, the trajectories of the 4 sandbags were all different. Some even hit other sandbags. Bang! Bang! Ross listened to the sounds coming from sandbags. He closed his eyes and punched 2 sandbags coming at him, causing them to fly back, but he was hit in the head by the other 2 sandbags because of his inaccurate judgment. It's very difficult to judge an attack without relying on vision. Ross opened his eyes and looked at the 4 sandbags swinging around. Then he closed his eyes again. Let's start with these 4 sandbags. Although there are only main points of training observation Hakis and no specific method on the notes, it is not difficult for Ross to figure out the basic practice method, direction, and route according to the layout of the room seen on the HAPO Navy ship. Bang! Bang! Ross closed his eyes, punched again and hit the 4 sandbags, causing them to flew out. Then he concentrated on perceiving the flight trajectory of the 4 sandbags. He punched out 4 times, and this time was a little better than the last time. He punched out 4 times and hit 3 sandbags, but these 3 punches are not hit in the right position. There is some deviation. It's coming back again. Ross opened his eyes for a moment and closed them again. Ross again threw 4 punches and hit 3 sandbags. As he gradually adapted to this exercise method, this time he was more precise than last time. After training for a while, Ross thought of the 10 points of talent proficiency he acquired when he killed Sai and Boo. The promotion of agility enhancement should also be helpful in practicing the observation Haki. He called the talent system and put these 10 points of proficiency to agility enhancement. The total proficiency of agility enhancement has reached 60. The improvement brought by agility enhancement is not only speed but also response time and more sensitive perception. These 10 points of talent proficiency went up, giving Ross the feeling that a part of weight has been lifted from his body and his body became much lighter. Continue. After adapting to the changes of his body, Ross exhaled and continued to hit the sandbags, practicing observation Haki. Kano country. 2 battleships were docked at the dock on the south bank, while the many pirate ships on the south coast had already dispersed and disappeared. Only wreckage remains of the HAPO Navy ship. Headquarters Rear Admiral Onigumo stood on the deck and shook his head as he listened to the report by his subordinates Marine. HAPO Navy is the official pirates of the Kano country. They are similar to Shichibukai, as they are generally not pursued by Marines. As one of the subordinate countries of the world government, Kano country has some connections with Marines. Before that, he had contacted the top authority of Kano country to let them stop Ghost Hand Ross. But he didn't expect Ross to easily leave. Sure enough, pirates are unreliable. Onigumo's eyes showed a trace of indifference. A Marine captain next to Onigumo frowned and whispered, "Rear Admiral, what are we going to do next? Ghost Hand Ross has destroyed the HAPO Navy ship. HAPO Navy will certainly not give up." Onigumo snorted coldly and said, "You want to say that we watch at the side and let them deal with him? What else our Navy could do if we can't even catch up to him? We can't let this situation continue or we will lose our standing in the headquarters." "Yes. The captain who was reprimanded bowed his head. Onigumo looked at the sea in the distance and a cold light flashed lightly in his eyes. He said, "That fellow bought a branch of treasure tree Adam. He should be planning to build a new ship. Most likely he is going to the shipwright town. Unfortunately, I will not give him the opportunity to ride on his new ship. Relay my orders, each branch's battleship will divert their course, the target is shipwright town, and completely destroy the ghost hand pirates." Shipwright town harbor. 3 days have passed since Sai and Boo were killed. Kano country is not far from the shipwright town, so even if it is a slow ship, it will still arrive at noon on the 4th day. In Ross's training cabin, 5 sandbags were swinging around Ross. He stood in the middle of the sandbags with his eyes closed as he kept punching the sandbags. In most cases, Ross could hit 5 sandbags and occasionally he will hit nothing and he gets hit by the sandbags. It is more difficult than he imagined to master the observation Hakis. After 3 days of continuous practicing, he is able to find a glimpse of the way, but it will take time to truly cross that. Haki is a hidden force that everyone has, but most people are unaware of it or unable to sense it. The first step in practicing Haki is to sense the existence of Haki and control it and then continue to develop it to strengthen Haki. The first step is undoubtedly the most difficult. Just as Ross closed his eyes and tried to grasp the special perception in the dark and his own observation Haki, the door of the cabin was knocked and Robin's voice came from outside. "Captain Ross, we have arrived at Shipwright Town's harbor." "Got it." Ross exhaled, opened his eyes and stopped the swinging sandbags and stayed at his position for a while. He recalled the training process in his mind. Then he got up and walked out of the cabin. Coming out of the cabin, he can see the harbor of the Shipwright Town. Shipwright Town was not big, much smaller than the Kano country, and was just a medium-sized island. However, the harbor here was much larger than the harbor in the Kano country and there was a lot of cargo piled up on the harbor. "This is not Kano country, pirates may not be welcome here." Robin walked over to Ross's side. Ross said indifferently, "Pirates don't exist so as to be liked by people, let's go." As before, they left the handyman on board. Ross and Robin got off the ship and landed on the dock. In the hope of finding the best shipwright, Ross found a worker carrying wood on the dock and threw out a gold coin at him and asked straightforwardly, "Who is the best shipwright here?" The worker was frightened to see Ross get off a pirate ship, but when he saw a gold coin thrown over to him, after staring blankly at it his timidity dropped a little. After hearing Ross's question, he pinched the gold coin and suddenly smiled. "We have very good shipwrights here, but if you want to ask for the best shipwright, it should be old man Fitz. He rarely makes ships for others, but the few ships he made are very famous." "You said old Fitz, is it Coconor Fitz?" Robin was shocked to hear the worker's words and asked him a question. "Yes." The worker nodded. He hadn't built a ship in a long time. Probably not many people knew that he is in our town. Ross looked at Robin a little strangely and asked, "Who is Coconor Fitz?" Robin put her finger on her chin, revealed a thoughtful expression and said, "Well, I've heard of red-haired Shank's ship when I was gathering information before. It seems that he made red-haired Shank's ship. Red-haired Shanks is New World Yonko, 4 emperors." Ross interrupted Robin's speech and looked at the worker in surprise. It is speculated that the hometown of Shanks was somewhere in the West Blue. He didn't expect that the shipwright who had made the ship for Yonko, 4 emperors, would be here. "Where is he?" "Go straight along this road, turn right after 2 blocks. There's a shabby cabin where he lives." The workers pointed out the way to Ross. He took Robin along that direction and turned right after crossing 2 streets. And at once he saw a shabby single-story cabin from afar. Outside the cabin, a group of seemingly angry people were gathered. "Captain, are we being cheated? The best shipwright lives in this broken-down place?" A man with a scar on his face frowned at another man with a broad-edged sword. The man with the broad-edged sword narrowed his eyes too and said, "Let's call him out and see for ourselves." Hearing the captain's words, a man came up and kicked the door of the wooden house and said, "Hey, the guy inside, get out. Our captain wants to see you." Silence. The man kicked the door hard again, but there was still no movement in the cabin. Just when they thought that there was no one inside, there was a sudden cough in the cabin. Cough. Cough. Really, I can't sleep well even for a nap. With a coughing sound, the door of the wooden house was pushed open. An old man about 50 or 60 years old with a gray beard and worn-out clothes came out from the inside. Looking at the old man's appearance, The group of people all frowned and some people couldn't help but say, "This guy is really the best shipwright. How dare that damn bastard lie to us?" Hey, if you are looking for the best shipwright, then you didn't find the wrong person. My skills are not bad. Old Fitz covered his mouth and coughed twice, taking a case of wine from the waist and took a sip, which made him feel good. Hearing the old man's words, all the people present looked at each other. Some of them were not convinced. After hesitating for a moment, someone said, "Our captain wants you to build a ship for him." "Oh." Old Fitz nodded and calmly said, "Not doing." The group of people was stunned. One of them showed irritation and pulled out his pistol and said, "Hey, old fellow, do you know who our captain is? If you don't want to die, cooperate." "Your captain, ah." Old Fitz spoke in a drawl. Suddenly, his wrist shook and a pistol was in his hand. A precise shot pierced the pirate's head. He raised the pistol and blew at the muzzle and sighed, "I really don't want to know." Damn. They apparently did not expect that this ugly old man would dare to start a fight with them. After a moment of stunned silence, they were furious and pulled out their respective weapons before surrounding Old Fitz. But just then, clear footsteps were heard behind them. Coming through. Ross walked behind two people, put his hands on their shoulders and pushed them to both sides. The body of the two people rotated and distorted a few times, their bones cracked and they fell to the ground. The numerous pirates were shocked by the sudden change in the situation. When they turned and saw Ross, their pupils shrunk and revealed panic in their eyes. "You are, Kacha." Ross kept on walking forward, and wherever he passed, the sound bones cracking and twisting was heard. A pirate tried to escape in terror, but Robin, who was following Ross, broke his neck with trying to strangle. Old Fitz didn't care about these pirates, and even when Ross appeared, he didn't care, but when he saw Robin behind Ross, his body abruptly froze. "Oh, Olivia." "No, you cannot be Olivia." Robin, who has always looked calm, after hearing the name of Olivia was stunned for a moment, and for the first time she lost control of her expression. Olivia. Full name Nico Olivia, one of the archaeologists of O'Hara and also the biological mother of Nico Robin. Ross looked at Old Fitz and looked at Robin again as surprise expression flashed in his eyes. He didn't expect to meet someone who was familiar with Robin's mother. Do you know Mom?" The 17-year-old black-haired girl looked at the Old Fitz, her fists slightly clenched as she asked in a rare sobbing voice. Old Fitz looked at Robin and leaned his head back and sighed. "Naturally, I sailed with her for some time in search of the history of my family. Devil child, Nico Robin, although she never said she had a child, I should have long thought of it." Old Fitz's eyes flashed with a trace of self-blame. Robin bit her lips. She, who always seems to be able to remain calm in any situation, revealed a trace of sadness and pain on her face. Old Fitz was silent for a moment and said, "Want to know something about your mother? If you want to know, come in and sit down. I'll tell you everything I know." Robin was silent and turned to look at Ross. "Just listen to it you want to hear. It's still early anyway." Ross nodded at her. Old Fitz looked at Ross before smiling at him and said, "Ghost hand Ross, you are different from the rumors spread about you. The government's newspapers are really bad." Old Fitz opened the door of the cabin and invited Ross and Robin together. The environment inside the cabin is the same as that of the outside. There is nothing special about it. Things like books, newspapers and so on are piled up everywhere, and the cabin is incomparably messy. Old Fitz didn't reveal any embarrassed expression and brought out two small wooden stools for them to sit while Ross and Robin ignored the messy environment and sat down without any awkwardness. From Old Fitz's mouth, Robin learned a lot about her mother, Olvia. Her face remained calm and silent and she did not shed any tears. Obviously, once again, she hid all of her emotions. "That is everything I know about your mother." Old Fitz finished his last sentence, took up the wine bottle and took a sip, his eyes slightly gloomy. Ross did not know much about Robin's mother's past, nor did he pay much attention to it. But some of the things that Fitz disclosed in his narrative made Ross very surprised. There are 3 ancient weapons in this world: Sea King Pluton, Poseidon, and Uranus. Among them, Pluton is a ship, and it is rumored that anyone can destroy an island with this ship. The construction of Pluton was the ultimate weapon created by the combination of all the top shipwright and scientists in the whole world at that time. And the ancestors of Old Fitz were one of the shipwrights that built the Pluton. In order to trace the origin of his blood and that period's history, Old Fitz boarded Olvia's ship and went with a group of archaeologists to find the lost history, but only a few of them were found in the end. There was a moment of silence. Old Fitz took another mouthful of wine before talking with Robin and Ross. Okay, that's all. You two shouldn't be idle to talk to an old man like me. What's the matter? Say, it won't be building a ship, right? Just want to ask you to help build a ship for me. Ross saw that Robin had her head bowed in silence, so he said to the old man Fitz. Fitz shook his forehead and said, I knew it. He looked at Robin and looked at Ross again. He said helplessly, really, you can't let an old man enjoy his old age? Help you build a ship. If the government knows, this old man will have to hide in another isolated island. Ross slightly smiled and didn't speak. Since the old Fitz and Robin's mother have a deep friendship and Robin was now wanted by the world government as a devil child and a crew member of his ship, it was clear that the sentimental old man would not sit idly by. Sure enough, after looking at Robin, old Fitz sighed and said, no way, I can't just sit back and ignore the only heir of my old friend. It seems that my old bones are going to be used one last time. Having said that, he stood up and asked Ross, don't tell me that you don't have any material ready. Just coming and finding an old man to build a ship. This old man can't make it out of nothing for you. Ross shook his head. The materials are here, but I only brought a main material, the branch of the treasure tree atom. The old Fitz eyes flashed slightly before saying, is this the 42-meter treasure tree branch? So that wood fell into your hands, good. With this wood as the keel, this old man will surely build a ship so fast that no battleship will be able to catch it. His ancestors were responsible for Pluton's power unit. Although the things of that time were already lost, Kokonor is still standing at the top of the world in designing ships for speed. Thank you very much, here is the reward. Ross put the bag filled with 80 million berries in front of him. Old Fitz grinned and did not refuse. Instead, he raised his hand and took it. After opening it up and looking at it, he said, enough. Even if you buy the best supplements, there are still 20 million berries that will be left and I won't have to worry about drinking in the future. He stood up and walked towards outside while carrying the bag of money at his back. After 2 steps, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at Ross. That's right. Marine has taken a thorough look at you. I'm afraid that with the government's intelligence capability they will soon know that you're here. Even if I pull a bunch of shipwrights together, it will take at least 7 days to complete the ship. If a battleship comes in within 7 days. Rest assured. Ross stood up and calmly accepted the conversation, saying, there will be no battleship to disturb your shipbuilding. I will deal with that problem. Old Fitz smiled as he saw Ross exiting his wooden house. Robin stood up and followed Ross out. As she passed Old Fitz, she whispered, thank you. You're welcome. Old Fitz answered and closed the door. With Old Fitz, the top shipwright leader and a group of other shipwrights called in, all the other materials for the ship were selected that day. As for shipbuilding drawings, Old Fitz had designed a speed-based ship a long time ago, but because the main material had to be the strongest wood, he had not been able to build it. This branch of treasure tree atom was just right for it. The design is often the most troublesome part, and if this part is skipped directly, the speed of building a ship will be greatly accelerated. It was because of this that Old Fitz said that the ship will be completed in 7 days. While Old Fitz was working day and night with many shipwrights to build the ship, Marine Headquarters Rear Admiral's fleet of 5 battleships approached the shipwright town. Finally, the Marine fleet arrived in shipwright town on the afternoon of the next day. Report. Ghost hand pirates are discovered on the north shore of the shipwright town. On the Marine battleship, a sentry post stood on a high place, lowered his telescope and reported to Headquarters Rear Admiral Onigumo, who wears Marine's justice cloak underneath. Not surprising. Onigumo, with a shimmer in his eyes, looked in the direction of the north bank and snorted. Transferring me from headquarters to West Blue for a pirate that has never been to the Grand Line. So far, finally I can complete this troublesome mission. For a single pirate of the West Blue, the entire Marine headquarters in charge of West Blue jumped up and down, covering up the facts, communicating with the government, chasing Ross and even sending him to West Blue, which he had been annoyed with. Tell the 5th battleship that their route is to remain unchanged. They need to block the escape route. The other battleships turn their course and surround the north shore. Yes. A colonel next to him immediately nodded. They did not expect that an ordinary pirate hunter would cause so much trouble after becoming a pirate. First, the colonel was killed and then the main branch base failed to catch him. Finally, the Marine headquarters was forced to send a rear admiral. Fortunately, this trouble can finally come to an end here, blocked by their 5 battleships, plus some other battleships which are late, but they are also driving this way. There is almost no possibility of them escaping from the Marines. Ghost Hand Pirate Group is destined to be destroyed here and become history. Shipwright Town West Bank. Old Fitz and 3 shipwright were constantly working, and 4 or 5 physically strong workers are constantly carrying planks, and the whole ship had begun to take shape. While beating on the ship's deck, Old Fitz inadvertently glanced at the distant sea and saw a dark shadow gradually approaching the shipwright town. That's a Marine's battleship. So fast, Old Fitz didn't expect Marine to come so soon. There is no Marine's branch base near Shipwright Town, and the nearest one is more than 10 days away. If Marine's reaction is slower, then it will be too late for them to stop him from building a new ship. What he didn't expect was Marine had assembled so many battleship fleets and only took 2 days to arrive here. He only thought that the nearest Marine base battleships would be here in 10 days, but he did not think that Marines had already assembled a fleet and had been following Ross's ship. Obviously, he underestimated Marine's will to kill Ross. If there are only 1 or 2 battleships, then with Ross's strength, who is the strongest pirate of the West Blues, he may be able to deal with them, but 5 battleships are different, and the battleship formation is very terrifying. Although Old Fitz has built many ships that are famous in the sea, he has never boarded any pirate ship. He had no problem dealing with a small pirate who dared to rob him. But in the face of the battleship level combat, there is nothing he can do. As long as you can get on this ship, even if there are more battleships, you could have easily outrun them, but now, if only I could have a few more days. Old Fitz's fist clenched tightly. At this distance, even if Ross was aboard his previous ship, he would not have the time to get rid of the Marine fleet. 5 battleship fleets were formed. Such a huge battle force obviously meant to destroy Ross directly without giving him any chance at all. How can I protect Olivia's child here? Old Fitz twisted his eyebrows together and racked his brains trying to find a way to help Ross and Robin escape from here, but nothing comes to his mind. He knows a lot of people, even Red Hair Shanks has a deep friendship with him, but in this situation, even if he can inform the Shanks in New World asking him for help, it is not possible for Shanks to appear here out of thin air. He doesn't have enough time. All the ways he can think of, he can't implement them due to the shortage of time. Marine battleships came so soon that they might have been chasing behind Ross all this time. This is really troublesome. Shipwright Town North Shore. In the training cabin of the old ship, Ross was standing at the center of 5 suspended sandbags, punching one punch after another and constantly beating the sandbags swinging around. His ship is being built here, and he is taking all the time he has to exercise, trying to master the observation Haki as soon as possible. He exercises every day and practices every day. Ross is sometimes very tired, but he never stops because he knows clearly that if he stops one day because he is tired, then there will be the next day and the third day. He didn't want to make fatigue an excuse for laziness. And, as early as the talent system first appeared, the system voice mentioned the phrase, "I suggest that the host should not rely too much on the system." Although Ross does not know the drawbacks of relying too much on the system, the reminder itself fits his idea, because the system, as it appears, is likely to disappear someday. If it should disappear, would everything of itself disappear with it? Because of this, Ross has always maintained the habit of practicing every day. Although the system may not disappear out of thin air, his exercises will not stop. Who? In the process of punching and beating sandbags, Ross gradually entered a state of extreme inner calm, as if he could feel every muscle in motion and the airflow brought by his breath. His perspective suddenly became the third party, watching his body standing there, punching and swinging sandbags. This feeling, Ross thought it was strange. This is the first time he has entered this state. In past practice, it has never appeared before. In this state, he seems to be able to observe every detailed change of his own. This state is also recorded in the notes. This is a state in which every muscle and every bone of the body can be perfectly controlled in detail. Once in this state, observation Haki is very close to being learned. The power of observation Haki is not so much the potential of the human body as it is a force that will be ignored in most cases. For an average person, their body is too weak, and the observation Haki is also very weak that it is almost useless. But, even many ordinary people, in the face of death, at the moment of life and death, will feel as if time has become extremely slow, as if they can see the trajectory of bullets fired at them. In fact, in the state of near death, the spirit is strongly stimulated, leading observation Haki to be completely stimulated in an instant. That's the feeling that appears at the life and death moment. Naturally, ordinary people can at most trigger a moment of observation Haki because of the stimulus of life and death. Most of them can no longer grasp that state after the event, and the burst of observation Haki will quickly return to the original state. But for people like Ross, what they have to do is to observe the existence of observation Hakis under normal conditions and master the power thoroughly. Peace, observe, calm. Ross tries his best to be not affected by this strange state of mind, to keep his mind calm and to observe his every move. He doesn't know how long ago it took, and under the repeated mechanization, Ross suddenly noticed a strange thing that lingered on his body like an airflow for a moment. Ross was shocked and instantly broke away from the state of complete calmness, and the strange airflow disappeared instantly from his perception. No mistakes, that's it. Ross's eyes showed a trace of excitement, and he was not depressed that he had withdrawn from that state, because as long as he could observe this state the first time, then he would certainly be able to observe this state a second and third time. When he is fully aware of the existence of observation Haki, it is not far from controlling and using this force. Ross took a deep breath and calmed his mind, ready to continue practicing. However, at this time, the door of the practice room was suddenly pushed open from the outside, and Robin appeared at the door with a grave expression, saying, "Captain, Marines are here." Ross raised his hand and pressed it against the sandbags that had been swinging around him. He said, "It only took them 2 days. It seems that they have been watching us while we were in the Kano country." Robin nodded, murmuring, "There are 3 medium-sized battleships in several directions, not excluding the possibility of other battleships. The standard arrangement for other 2 small battleships and West Blue Marine branch bases should also have 2 medium-sized battleships and 4 small battleships. 5 battleships." Even though Robin knew Ross's strength, her heart was faintly worried when she detected 5 battleships coming. That is to say, this time the battleships are either assembled from several branch bases nearby or from outside the West Blue. Ross took over. "Yes." Robin nodded. "For West Blue, it's a powerful fleet that can sweep in all directions, even if the 10 pirate groups of West Blue with an individual bounty of over 30 million berries group together, they all have to flee in front of such a fleet. Pirates who have never set foot on the Grand Line have little chance of setting off waves before such force. The presence of such a large fleet in West Blue is enough to show Marines' determination to kill Ross and the importance it attaches to this." Ross smiled. 5 battleships, a rear admiral sent by the headquarters to catch me. They really think highly of me." He tidied up his slightly messy shirt, went to the door of the cabin and walked past Robin and came out on the deck, looking out into the distant sea. Far away, Marines' battleships are clearly visible. 4 battleships were slowly approaching the north bank, near Ross's ship. Many of the Marines on battleship were serious, and they were waiting with their swords in hand. The man they wanted to arrest was Ghost Hand Ross that turned the West Blue upside down. Even if they are led by a rear admiral sent by headquarters, they would not dare to become careless. Reporting to Captain, "The enemy ship is about to enter the shelling range. Do we start the bombardment?" On one of the battleships, a lieutenant commander in charge of the cannons asked a captain on the ship. The captain looked at the Ghost Hand pirate ship in the distance and said, "The command ship hasn't issued any orders, so we will wait." "Captain," the lieutenant commander hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but say, "Forgive me for saying this, but Ghost Hand Ross is fierce, ruthless, and cruel. Everyone we've met calls him a wicked devil. We should try our best to avoid confronting him head-on and break his ship and sink him directly into the sea." "It makes sense, but do you want to give orders beyond our power? And that Ghost Hand Ross may not be on board." When the captain said it, he snorted and said, "Don't worry, we have Rear Admiral Onigumo from headquarters. Even if Ghost Hand Ross is really a wicked devil, he'll have to go to hell obediently." In the middle of their conversation, the command from the main ship finally came. "Prepare the cannons, aim at the enemy ship and start preparation for the shelling." Following Onigumo's orders, Marines on 5 battleship ships breathed a sigh of relief and acted one after another, filling cannonball into the barrel of the cannon and aimed them at the pirate ship of Ross. 5 battleships only need a single round of simultaneous fire to destroy a pirate ship like that of Ross. There will remain nothing that is intact after the bombardment. However, just as several battleships were approaching Ross's pirate ship and the ship was about to enter the bombardment range, a figure suddenly jumped up and landed in the sea and started rushing towards them over the sea. "That is, a man? It's Ghost Hand Ross. That guy can run on the sea." Looking at the silhouette of the rushing, many of the Marines were first to stare, and then they all reacted. They were all eyes wide and surprised. Looking at the moving figure in the sea, many Marines on the battleship stared at first, then reacted one after another, their eyes wide, showing surprise. Looking at Ross's figure that was heading towards one of the battleship, several Marines on the battleship reacted and the captain shouted directly. "Don't let him approach. Aim at Ghost Hand Ross, start firing." Many of the Marines on battleship had already prepared for the bombardment. When they heard their captain command, they suppressed the shock in their hearts and turned the barrel's angle slightly, aiming at Ross. Bang! 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 In the midst of the smoke, countless cannonballs flew towards Ross like a raging rainstorm. The area around Ross, who was running towards them on the sea, was completely covered. Headquarters Rear Admiral Onigumo was standing on the main battleship with a cigarette in his mouth as he watches the scene and spits out a puff of smoke, saying, "Did he really think that the cannons on the battleship are ornaments? For him to directly rush at the battleship? Even I wouldn't dare to do this." There was a hint of ridicule on his face, however. Almost at the next moment, the water spray from the cannonball on the sea fell back on the sea, and all mockery on Onigumo's face solidified because Ross's figure was still running towards them and there were no scars on his body. Even his clothes were not wet from the water. How is this possible? Onigumo was surprised. Just as he frowned and wanted to continue looking, several cannons on battleship launched another attack, once again enveloping the area around Ross. Again, the cannonball fire failed to leave any trace on Ross, whether it was the cannonball rain or splashing water. Ross passed directly through them. No. This time Onigumo finally noticed something wrong. Because Ross was not affected by the cannonballs and the sprayed water, and he didn't even have any water on the soles of his feet, as if he had no weight at all. Rethinking about all of Ross's ability in the intelligence, Onigumo suddenly screamed in a loud voice and said, "Be careful." That's the illusion he made with his ability at sea. However, it was obviously too late to notice now. He saw that Ross, which was running on the sea, was already close to a small battleship. After jumping up, he jumped directly to the battleship. With a sound, Ross stepped on the ship's deck. It was obvious that at some time Ross's illusionary body merged with his real body. On the battleship, Marine Captain watched as Ross landed on his battleship with a look of horror and panic. He tried to make his subordinates Marines fire their guns at Ross. But, before he can even give his orders, he saw that the ship's deck beneath Ross's feet suddenly started to twist. The shipboard made of hardwood suddenly seems to become like wave. With Ross as the center, it started to twist in all directions and the whole hull makes an unbearable sound of kacha-kacha. Bang! 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 In their panicked state, the Marines started to fire their guns at Ross, but Ross has no intention to dodge. His hands were stretched out on both sides and the bullets that touched his hands and body got twisted around or stopped still. Under the horrified gaze of the Marines on several other battleships, this small battleship, which is tens of meters long, appears to be twisting and folding in the middle. It's like an invisible giant holding a model ship in both of his hands, and he is exerting force from both sides of the ship, and finally the small ship completely collapsed. Damn it! When Onigumo saw this scene, he shouted angrily. The cigarette in his mouth had already been bitten by him. He looked angrily at the location where battleship had collapsed. The ship was twisted by a rigid spiral and turned into a twist like battleship. After losing the power of distortion, the ship's deck collapsed and shattered completely. At this time, Ross's figure also jumped from it, charging into the second battleship. Fire! Stop him! Marine on the other battleship looks at Ross, who was rushing towards them. Behind him a twisted ship with almost all Marines were dead. However, even as the captain on board gave his orders and countless cannonballs fired at Ross, they all passed through him without having any effect on him. Obviously, at some time, Ross, who was running on the sea, became a phantom image again. Bang! In the continuous bombardment, Ross's figure rushed towards the second battleship. He pressed his hand on the bulkhead of the battleship cabin and the power of distortion violently ignited. The entire cabin showed a strange twist as it turned into a spiral cake-like figure. Stop him! A Marine captain with a long sword in his hand rushed towards Ross with a roar. The long sword in his hand slashed out, wrapped in weak sword energy, towards Ross. Ross had no intention of avoiding it and his other hand lifted to block it. The sword energy fell towards his hand like a snake. It twisted a few times and then collapsed and broke, and then the captain's sword was also pinched between his fingers. Weak sword arts. The power of this sword is comparable to Captain Moby, but for him now, it can be pinched between his fingers.